Welcome into Fantasy Football Night in America. It is the FFPC Insider Access Show on the Better Sports Network. Hi, hello, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Balkman. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman, and of course, the FFPC on X at FFPC. We'll lead off with a pretty big story tonight, and with a pretty big story, you got to get a pretty big guest. This guy has been crushing it in an FSWA nominated finalist for his work over at Fantasy Guru. You connect with him on X at Tyler Buecher. Please welcome onto the program, Mr. Tyler Buecher. Tyler, good evening, sir.
Good evening. How's it going?
It's going good. It's always good to chat with literally anybody this late in the fantasy season because everybody's slammed with everything. How slammed are you right now with everything you're working on? Because I know you're doing Dynasty, you're doing Redraft, you're doing DFS, you're doing it all.
Yeah, we've got everything covered over there at fantasyguru.com, but now it's kind of the calm before the storm. We've got a little bit of lull in terms of the third week of preseason. Usually that's for the back end of the 53 guys. So most of our changes and updates, they're done. So it's just kind of fine-tuning everything, keeping up with injuries. Right now, it's just waiting until week one. I'm ready to dive into that kind of analysis, the matchup stuff.
Yeah, and we should touch on that too as much as we can tonight. I'll do my best to set you up for that because I think there's a lot of people that are still drafting, but there's a lot of people that are ready for week one as well. And if you are still drafting, check out the FFPC main event, $1 million grand prize. You're going to be able to enter that contest in live drafts. I think we may have. I have to look this up. I think we have one hour slow draft filling up right now. But other than that, it's all live drafts, and those will go all through next Saturday night as well. So check that out, myffpc.com. Of course, the big Gorilla Tournament, again, $1 million grand prize there. You're going to get a $50 discount for every third team you sign up for. The 7 Bananas promo is live. That's always fun, too. If you keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row, we're going to give you free teams. We've already awarded 70-some free FFPC Best Ball Tournament teams. We just awarded our 6th free FFPC main event team. That's a $2,200 value, and we'll go all the way up to a $50,000 award or a Jungle Safari for 4 if you get it 5 times in a row, whichever you prefer. FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments, these are pacing for to reach capacity early. I'm betting that the Superflex Best Ball is probably going to be done on Saturday, the Best Ball tournament shortly thereafter. So if you want to take a chance at that $300,000 grand prize or the $100,000 grand prize in those 2 tournaments, check it out now at myffpc.com. Dynasty Startup still going strong too via live draft with the 60-second timer. Those entry fees start at $100, go up from there. 2,000 plus leagues in 15 years, and none have ever folded. MyFFPC.com is where to go to that. Shout out to our producer, Matt Deutsch, tonight, pushing the right buttons on the board. And we have to find out who pushed the right buttons in this Packers-Cowboys trade that went down roughly 2 hours or so ago, or at least reported 2 hours ago. Adam Schefter reporting that Micah Parsons is being acquired by the Green Bay Packers in exchange for 2 first-round picks and defensive tackle Kenny Clark. The Packers have since signed him to a 4-year, $188 million extension. At least $120 million is fully guaranteed. I also heard the $136 number put out there by Ian Rappaport. This obviously helps the Green Bay Packers defense quite a bit, but here's the fantasy slant. This hurts the Dallas Cowboys defense quite a bit, and in turn, it could help that passing game. Tyler, we'll probably talk about the Cowboys throughout the show tonight, but just your initial thoughts. No Micah Parsons means more CeeDee Lamb, more George Pickens, more Jake Ferguson, more Dak Prescott. How significant of a move should people be making in their FFPC drafts over the next week of these guys up their boards, knowing that they're going to be relied on a lot more, and there could be more shootout potential with the Cowboys games going forward?
Absolutely. Huge news here for Dallas. I expect this team to take a step forward in the passing development here with Brian Schottenheimer, their play caller. I think CeeDee Lamb, a guy that can arguably a top 3 selection in redraft leagues right now, shoots up the board. We've seen him consistently be a high-end fantasy producer year in and year out. The addition of George Pickens cannot be understated, though. This guy is just a fantastic field stretcher, and ability to win on the perimeter is just going to really help this offense as a whole. We haven't really seen a guy of his caliber be productive in terms of being a consistent fantasy outside asset since Michael Gallup several years back. The Brandon Cooks years were kind of middling. But I think there's a good chance that we see George Pickens really outproduce his ADP and become one of these guys that you're consistently starting week in and week out with a lot of confidence, and not just the wavering flex play that he was with Pittsburgh in the Arthur Smith days. But losing Micah is huge for a team that was, I believe, number one in pressure rate last year. To lose a pass rusher of his caliber is huge. They did bring in Ohio State's Donovan Izuruku. I'm probably saying that last name wrong, but they did bring in some guys to help offset that. But man, it's just a big step backwards where they're going to be in a lot of passing game scripts. It's going to be a lot of volume for Dak. I know a lot of people are targeting his season-long over in passing yardage. The 4,500 mark is something I keep seeing consistently posted in the Twitter streets, but it's for a good reason. I think this team's going to have to pass out of necessity often through the trailing game scripts. And the run game is pretty much non-existent. I think Javonte Williams' days are numbered as a NFL starting caliber back. He's on my fade list, to be honest. I just think that he's never really recovered from the injuries he suffered 2 years back. So we're looking at a banged up Miles Sanders and a rookie there in Jayden Blue. So it'll be an interesting rush attack where it's going to be a passing game that prevails in Dallas.
The CeeDee Lamb aspect of this, not very much higher to go on draft boards. Tyler, is this, knowing that Parsons is now in Green Bay, is that enough for you to say, hey, I would actually take Lamb over Chase, or is Chase still the de facto number one wide receiver for you?
I would say Chase would still be the de facto number one. I mean, it's tough coming off that Triple Crown where he had such an elite amount of volume, the yardage, the touchdowns, everything across the board there was just all in Chase's favor. And you can argue Cincinnati's defense has already taken multiple steps backward. They got a new defensive coordinator coming in here from Notre Dame, a team that played the most man coverage in college last year. The Bengals do not have the corners for that. So if they replicate that even to a slight degree, the opposing offenses are just going to light them up in terms of passing yardage and passing productivity. So I envision Bengals being the number one team in pass rate over expectation again in 2025, and for Chase to be the torch holder in terms of being the guy leading the team in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns.
What I thought was going to be our lead story tonight, and does involve a receiver here, Rashee Rice. Tom Pelissero putting this out yesterday that Rice has accepted a 6-game suspension to start the 2025 regular season. And it sounds like the NFL, NFLPA, and Rice's team are now all on the same page when it comes to this. He is going to be eligible for the first time in the fantasy season in week 7 when Kansas City is going to battle the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a good thing, in my opinion, that this is out of the way now. You don't have to worry about getting off to this fast start with Rice and then being slowed down during the fantasy playoffs, or, think about the FFPC main event or the Big Gorilla Championship round, which is going on later in the year. Barring injury, Rice will be available for that. When you look at this, where he's going in drafts right now, Tyler, Rashee Rice, wide receiver 34 at the 6'11", do you envision him moving up boards anymore now that people know that if I do build a good team around him, I could have a cheat code here with Rice coming at the stretch run of the season, because I won't have to worry about him serving a suspension when I'm going for all that cash?
Absolutely. I mean, the question mark was when it was going to occur and how long it was going to occur. We've got the clarity on both now. 6 games is still a notable amount of time to miss, but it's not the 10 games that we were rumored to see. So I think we're going to get Rice back when it's most important, during the bye weeks, once they start coming in, and during the fantasy playoffs, which we need him to be able to take on some championships. Initially, that wasn't the case. So I think we also need to remember he's coming off injury. He also gets an extra 6 weeks to get fully healthy, gets to hit the ground running in that week 7 matchup against Las Vegas. I prefer to tack Rice onto some wide receiver heavy starts, generally as like a wide receiver 4, going off the board, that 6-7 turn, like you mentioned there in main events, where it's a pretty easy click there to me. Just super dominant in 2024. Prior to injury, he posted a 31.5% target share, 9.7 targets per game, and 41.2% first read rate with Mahomes. As his go-to guy, I think he sported a 3.6 yards per route run mark, if I'm not mistaken, and a 21-plus fantasy points per game over that 3-game span. And sure, it's always a dangerous game to extrapolate small sample sizes, but it wasn't like Rice was a check down player. These were first reads. These were a designed part of the offense. And we've seen it in years past where that guy was Kelsey, but the torch has been passed to Rice in my eyes. So he's the guy that I really want to target pretty heavily in my drafts, but he will be on teams where I'm not also pairing him with squads that have either injured wide receivers or receivers slated for suspension. So he's kind of a context build as well.
That's interesting for Rice, because I think there's a lot of different ways you can play it. But we agree that it is good news here, and we also agree that his ADP is probably going to be moving up a little bit as well as we get closer and closer to our live events over at Paris Casino in Las Vegas coming up 1 week from today. They kick off this 1 week from this morning. We'll have live FFPC events going on at Paris Hotel and Casino. That's going to be a good time. It always is a good time as well. Terry McLaurin's having a good time this week because he's back in camp and got paid here. We have Terry McLaurin in the news this week as Jordan Schultz reporting that he has agreed to a 3-year extension with the Commanders worth more than $96 million. McLaurin is going to turn 30 next month. His average salary is now $32 million. That's the same as A.J. Brown. And he's making fewer than only Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, and Garrett Wilson. Obviously, good company to be in, no question there. When you look at McLaurin and drafts right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla over the last 2 days, and by the way, I get this data from fantasymojo.com. You can connect with Darren Armani, the webmaster, on X at Fantasy Mojo. He is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge, something that Tyler Buecher participated in this year. And you can watch back all those Pros versus Joes drafts right here on the Better Sports Network, as they are all available for you on demand right now. The ADP that we have on him in the Big Gorilla over the last 2 days for Terry McLaurin is wide receiver 20, and he is going at the 408. This is Harrison, Adams, Worthy territory right now. McLaurin at wide receiver 20 at the 408. Tyler, I'm glad he's in camp right now. I'm glad that they figured this out, but at the same time, he missed all of camp. He turns 30 next month, and I think there's going to be some touchdown regression coming for him this season. So even though he's signed, there are still some red flags on his profile here. When you think about drafting McLaurin here in the FFPC Big Gorilla, the middle to late of the 4th round, is that something that you want to be in business with McLaurin at that price?
That's a sweet spot for wide receivers. So we've got to really nitpick all these guys. And I think you're making some great points as to why you may be a little bearish on that after that rise. I was a bit more comfortable grabbing him at that 4-5 turn. Now that he's squarely in round 4, I think we got to compete against other teams in the Gorilla that were able to get him at a bit of a discount. So I'm keeping that in mind. But really my big takeaway here is just 99% of these holdouts end up being nothing and non-issues. It's good that he's back in camp, but I expect what you thought, where we're going to see a bit of a delay in terms of the immediate producer. The good thing for him is the Commanders finished the preseason with just 5 wide receivers on their final 53-man roster, 3 of which, Debo, Luke McCaffrey, and rookie Jalen Lane, are more slot-based. So there's really a minimal competition in terms of the archetype and role that he'll play, him being McLaurin in this offense with Cliff Kingsbury. So throw in Noah Brown's lengthy injury history and that he's going to turn 30 as well. I'm kind of okay with McLaurin. It's just not a priority click. I'll say that.
Yeah, not a priority click is the way to do it. I did 14 drafts this past weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't think I drafted McLaurin in a lot of them. You talk about that sweet spot. There are a lot of good receivers there going that I happen to like personally better, that I'm more excited about. Guys I didn't mention, Cortland Sutton, George Pickens going in that area too. Jameson Williams. I'd much rather draft those guys rather than Terry McLaurin this year. And hopefully I'm wrong for McLaurin's sake and for all the people who drafted McLaurin as well. Sticking with the Commanders here, my God, we got to talk about Bill. Jacory Croskey-Merritt sweeping FFPC drafts right now. People very excited about this guy. He did not play in the Commanders preseason finale against the Ravens. Austin Eckler also set that one out as well. Brian Robinson did, and he is now a San Francisco 49er. More to come on that from Tyler Buecher on the fallout with Brian Robinson in San Francisco. I go back and forth on this. I see a path to victory with Croskey-Merritt, who's risen up to the 801. He's at that 7-8 turn, running back 29. Tyrone Tracy, Zach Charbonnet, Caleb Johnson, and Jalen Warren both going right next to him. I've also heard people say that, Eckler led this backfield in snaps last year. There's a good shot he does it again this year. Is the role clear for Croskey-Merritt? I think Eckler is still probably the better pass catcher between those two. And you can make the case that Chris Rodriguez and or Jaden Daniels is going to get goal line. So if you take Croskey-Merritt at that 7-8 turn, Tyler, how are you winning with it? How do you win with JCM in 2025?
I don't know if you do if you're taking him at that 7-8 turn, because we are buying the iron price right now with him at his most expensive. And when we're competing against other gorillas and other main events that drafted him even just weeks ago, it was a huge discount relative to what we're looking at here. But you are right. Bill is the hot name of the summer right now, but it's been such a strange profile given what we saw in 2023, the non-existent profile in 2024, tearing up the East-West Shrine game, a 4.45 at his pro day. There's a lot to like in terms of the profile. But you talk about the utilization and the role. I mean, there's a lot of question marks here. The Chris Rodriguez, I think he's really the guy who pushed Brian Robinson Jr. off this roster, where he had a pretty good preseason, pretty good training camp, and he's currently the front runner for the short yardage guy, the goal line work, and the player to throw in when they're working with a lead late in games. Eckler, the guy that's going to be the pass catching, the change of pace option, stealing the receiving work. And then we've got Daniels, we've got Debo. These guys could also come in here and take a lot of rushing work away. So I'm kind of lukewarm on Bill right now at this cost. Maybe I would take him on some 0 RB builds or hero RB builds where I'm playing from behind and just throwing the dart throw. But you've really just got to hope that some explosive plays turn into touchdowns for him to be a guy that you can confidently put in start-sit formats.
He's a fun click. There's no question about that. It's fun to draft Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I did it last weekend in Louisville at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Bill Hollywood, one of the guys watching us on YouTube last night, said, Eric, I didn't see you drafting RJ Harvey at all, but I do remember you taking Bill from me. Yeah, I think that was the one league I did get Croskey-Merritt and Bill. But I will ask you before we get to Brian Robinson here, RJ Harvey, do you have any? I don't think I put him on the show sheet at all tonight, so we can talk about him here. Do you have any strong feelings about that Denver backfield this year, Tyler? Right now, if I can just dump the ADP to you in the FFPC Big Gorilla, where you're looking at Harvey and Sutton, or not Sutton, Harvey and Dobbins, excuse me. Harvey running back 20 at the 504, J.K. Dobbins running back 34 at the 811. Harvey, you're definitely paying a premium for it. I see both sides of the story, that Harvey maybe starts off slow but takes over this backfield. Dobbins is a guy, I don't know how he keeps coming back from all these injuries, but he keeps suffering significant injuries. And if Dobbins were to go down, that would mean wheels up for Harvey. There's a lot of different ways we can look at this, Tyler, in drafts. How are you looking at Harvey and Dobbins in high-stakes drafts at the moment?
Yeah, I think you and I see it similarly, where it looks like it's going to be a chance for Dobbins to be maybe the week 1 snap leader, overall touch leader. But I don't think the RJ Harvey case is like where you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. But once we see him on the field and performing really well, really, really talented prospect. And when I look back at like the Chargers last year, they opened the season with a very, very high rush rate over expectation. They were not passing it very heavily. Eventually they had to stop doing that because the run game just kind of fell apart. Like Dobbins was just not consistently doing what he was supposed to. They finished the year 27th in rush success rate. So I think there's a lot of hiccups there with Dobbins, not even including the injury history, which is super lengthy and concerning. Harvey, though, is a massive target of mine. I think I want to buy a lot of these rookie running backs this year, and across my drafts, just period. Across my portfolio, I want a lot of these rookie running backs because I think most of them are entering some good situations where we can get some usage right away. A lot of these backs are guys we historically tend to wait for a second half production, but Harvey's one of those guys where I think we could start to see that utilization and opportunity ramp up with each passing week to start the year. So maybe it's not a comfortable week 1 click in terms of your RB2 slot or something like that, but man, he just has such a great profile. And when we look at the Sean Payton's scheme and system and that offensive line, like it just all connects the dots for a big year for Harvey. So he's a guy that's become a big target of mine.
Are you worried about, because I know in the past with Sean Payton, he's had these specialists like, Pierre Thomas or what have you. He's had these guys that fulfilled certain roles. Obviously if one or two of these guys don't stay healthy in the Denver backfield, wheels up. But what happens if they are healthy-ish? Are you worried about even later in the season of Harvey not being able to wrestle away this backfield from Dobbins? Even if he's doing it for us, like we can see it. But Sean Payton we got to trust him on this. And for a guy who's utilized multiple running backs over the course of his career, why does that not necessarily concern you as much as it would somebody else who is down on Harvey?
Yeah, I mean, trusting Sean Payton is very much Lucy in the football kind of situation where you never know when he's going to pull it away and throw in some random back. We'll get a McLaughlin the week randomly. But I think like I said, these elite prospects, this is such a strong running back class where I think a lot of these guys are going to quickly ascend their respective depth charts and become fantasy stalwarts that are here to stay. Dobbins, I think he's had his chance. It just really hasn't occurred for him. I'm buying the upside in the rookie who again, I don't think it's going to be a week 1 slam dunk, but I do think by October, November, we are confidently playing him.
The other aspect of getting back to the Croskey-Merritt discussion, the other aspect that had to go into Croskey-Merritt moving up boards, besides his big preseason, was the removal of Brian Robinson off the Commanders roster, and they took care of that with sending him to San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan, unprompted, maybe a little bit prompted, but he went out and said, like, right away, like, we brought this guy in to be our number 2 back. Isaac Guerrero, there were reports that there was a falling out perhaps between the coaching staff and him, where he wasn't as highly regarded by them as he was in 2024 when he was healthy. This is a player who had 800 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns as the lead back for an ascendant offense in Washington last year. Shanahan is saying that he was pumped that he was available. He's always been a big fan of Brian Robinson as well. So he's saying all the right things. And I think this is what it boils down to. He will not have standalone value in that Niners backfield. However, if you are skittish and nervous about drafting Christian McCaffrey, and I just did a show about an hour or so ago where a listener brought up this same topic to me about, whether I believe in Christian McCaffrey this year. Here's the thing. If you're nervous about McCaffrey, or if you're down on him, Tyler, don't you have to be a Brian Robinson fan at that point? If you believe McCaffrey is destined to miss 10 plus games for the 4th out of the last 6 years in 2025, if you believe that to happen, Brian Robinson is a fantastic selection right now as running back 49 in the 12th round of the FFPC Big Gorilla.
Yeah, I would like to think so. It's definitely a fall from grace for Isaac Guerrero, who, he was the speed score poster boy last year, where he had the great size and the great 40. I thought he was going to be a fantastic asset for years to come, but unfortunately, it's kind of trending now where he looks like one of the many running back whiffs from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who just cannot get that RB position right. Grendo's also battling a shoulder injury, so I think that's going to be also something contributing here. Jordan James, the rookie they grabbed this year, also battling injury. So Brian Robinson just being healthy is great for San Francisco, who their running back group is thin. Their wide receiver group is thin. They just need bodies. So by default, I think Brian Robinson really elevates in terms of being a solid RB2 for this depth chart, but I just don't see him participating in the same way Christian McCaffrey does, as that guy that averaged 5+ catches per game ever since joining San Francisco. That's just not really Robinson's bag. So should an injury occur to CMC, I think we're looking at more of a split backfield, with Robinson being more of the conventional 1-2 down guy and between the tackles kind of runner. So he's not really super high on my board, but maybe it's because I'm a bit more too bullish on the passing attack for San Francisco.
Yeah, John Lynch going out of his way to shake those giant sequoias of Northern California for some goodness to fall out, signing Marquez Valdez-Scantling to the practice squad today. I always say stuff like that is the act of a desperate man, and maybe he's desperate because of Jauan Jennings. He was asked, Lynch was, about his availability and his improvement from this calf injury, that he's hopeful Jennings will be out there week 1, but he's not sure about that. He also said, because there's somewhat of a contract dispute between the Niners and Jauan Jennings, that he said that there will be no trade of Jennings to another team, and the Niners need somebody else to start next to Ricky Pearsall in week 1. They won't have Brandon Aiyuk. We're going to get to him in a second. Russell Gage recently signed by the Niners as well. So when you look at Jennings, number one, Tyler, how are you viewing this absence? It's probably, maybe it's a mixture of the calf and wanting more money. Maybe it's just more money. I know there were reports coming out. Was it Tim Kawakami who had it, that there's talk about maybe placing him on IR to start the season, more of a threat to say, hey, we need you out on the field rather than holding out for more money when we just gave you more money, even though he's still kind of underpaid. How do you read the calf / contract situation with Jennings? And more importantly, what are you doing with Jennings as wide receiver 44 at the 8-9 turn in FFPC Big Gorilla drafts, being selected right around Michael Pittman, Keon Coleman, and Cooper Kupp, Tyler?
Yeah, it's a big question right now. I mentioned the Niners having a lot of injuries on the wide receiver depth chart. Aiyuk with that torn ACL, MCL, he's on the PUP list. Jauan Jennings with the calf or contract. DeMarcus Robinson suspended the first 3 games. Some younger guys, Jordan Watkins, high ankle sprain. Jacob Cowing was just put on IR. We've got Pearsall, Sky Moore, and MVS as the starting 3 bodies right now in practice. Not looking great right now. So I think this could be a threat in terms of the possibility that Jennings just needs to get out there. Otherwise, we're going to have nobody to really throw to. If that's the case, at like a desperation case, maybe we start to see a 11:59 kind of midnight hour contract extension like we got here with Terry McLaurin, where Jennings is kind of at that age too, where he's getting up there in terms of his ability to secure multi-year contracts. I think this could be one of his last chances. He knows it. He's trying to use it as leverage. Problem is he just really doesn't have the large runway of productivity aside from some splash weeks last year where he was consistently putting up good production, but the rest of the profile has been more of the blocking in the Shanahan offense. So I'm still drafting him at 7-8 because I still think there's a lot of positivity there given the thinness of the depth chart and room for him to outperform that ADP. But I will admit he's a bit more of a risky click.
And the other thing to keep in mind, some of the stuff we talked about with McLaurin, Croskey-Merritt earlier, his ADP has been falling. Jennings has. Like, he was going much earlier prior to the calf injury, prior to the contract thing. Now you can get him, like I said, at the 902 on average, and there could be some value in that and getting your Jennings shares for those of you best ballers right now, or just taking advantage of like, hey, I need a receiver, or I'm just going to add to my depth here on my big gorilla team and add Jennings at the 902. There's definitely, they're taking applications for wide receivers in San Francisco right now because of how beat up they are. And one of those players that has been beat up is one Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I'm going to share it anyway. Just to update everybody, Aiyuk has been placed on the PUP list to start the season. So he is out for the first 4 games. Kyle Shanahan originally said that he hoped around week 6, Aiyuk was going to be back. And, maybe he's back before that. Maybe he's back after that. Here's my concern with how significant of an injury that was. ACL, obviously much more serious than Stephon Diggs, who's been out there running and cutting for the Patriots for a while. My concern, if you invest in Brandon Aiyuk, and his price has never been lower, in the big gorilla, wide receiver 58 right now, Tyler. He is going in the 13th round next to Cedric Tillman and Rashad Bateman. My concern is you draft Aiyuk, you hold him onto your roster for 6 weeks or 5 weeks. He's back week 6. You probably can't start him week 6 because you don't know how he's going to be used. So he's back to, normal or as normal as he's going to get in 2025 in, let's say, week 8, week 9. Pearsall and Jennings, Pearsall for sure, will have a significant amount of time, almost 2 months, to establish a rapport with Purdy. And that's not even including the rapport Purdy already has with Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Then you consider, with how serious that injury was, is Aiyuk not going to be fully right until 2026? Is this a mulligan year for him? In other words, even if you get him in the 13th round, does this guy still not pay off from you when you consider not necessarily the opportunity cost of his draft capital, but the opportunity cost of keeping this guy on your roster all season? My contention is this. It is fool's gold to be drafting Brandon Aiyuk in the 13th round right now, even though that price is so juicy, because I think he is just not going to pay off in the way that you need him to pay off this season. He doesn't represent a big spike week for type of guy for me. He's coming into a situation where he's going to be behind the 8 ball. It's like the Niners will be on mile 14 of that marathon, and he's just starting, right? He has no shot of catching up and being relevant in this offense. Maybe that's an unpopular take, but I feel like even with how good the draft capital is for him, for drafters right now, I still think he's an avoid for me.
I agree. He's not a player I've targeted once really all redraft season, because I think that burning a hole on your bench, especially early in the year when he had the most turnover, is just kind of foolish to me for a player that, like you said, he may come back week 6, he may come back week 7, week 8, but there could be a ramp up period. There could be a setback. There could be all kinds of different things that take this on a turn for the worse, where Aiyuk really just kind of is more of a roster clogger all season when we look back on the year. So he's not a player I'm targeting at all. I think he's a really risky selection. The only kind of avenue I would consider him would be maybe if you go wide receiver super heavy to start your draft, and he's just a luxury click where maybe he falls beyond round 13 and you get him 14 or 15 for a relative discount, and he's just a luxury selection. Outside of that, I think it's a risky click that you do not need to make.
So one of the other things I want to bring up, and this was not it wasn't all good news for the Green Bay Packers today. I noticed you engaged with this on X too. Jason Wilde. By the way, Jason Wilde, former high school classmate of FFPC co-founder Dave Gerzak. There's some trivia for you. Jayden Reed has returned to practice, and he's planning on playing through a foot injury that normally requires surgery. He says he's working through it and that he did not feel 100% today, and he's unsure if he's going to play week 1 against the Detroit Lions. But a source, a league source, said Wednesday that the specific injury is a Jones fracture, which is a break in his 5th metatarsal bone. That's the bone that connects the pinky toe to the base of the foot. Now, you can read Jason Wilde's article on channel3000.com if you want to get into the whole medical stuff of it. I'm not going to do this. But a Jones fracture is certainly not the type of injury I want if I'm drafting right now. When you consider that the players that are going around Jayden Reed in drafts right now. So you could take Jayden Reed, who very well could be the number 1 receiver on the Packers this year. I don't think that's likely anymore, but it's possible. You could take Jayden Reed at wide receiver 49 in the 10th round, which would make some sense. Ironically, he's going right next to Chris Godwin, Tyler, another guy who's coming off a significant injury. You could take those guys there, or you could wait and grab a healthy guy in Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen, Rashid Shaheed, Marvin Mims, Luther Burden, all these other guys. I think those are better investments. I understand the upside for Reed. And the other thing I'll bring up with Reed too, he had a significant shoulder injury that he suffered about 2/3 of the way through the season last year. And basically he became a decoy for that Packers offense after that. He was not out there to get passes, not out there to make plays. He had a horrible, horrible last third of the season for fantasy purposes. So I don't hold that against him. He recovered from that. Shoulder's been good all offseason, or I shouldn't say all offseason, but he recovered from that like a month or 2 after the season ended, and he was good. There's been no complaints about the shoulder. But a Jones fracture for a guy who's got to be running all these routes, who relies on shiftiness and just this is and with the addition of Matthew Golden too, it's going to be very easy for the Packers to take more off Jayden Reed's plate and give it to Golden. I think that if you want to draft him in the mid-10th, go with God, because I will not be there with you on this. I'm avoiding Reed at that cost. This report was not a good one.
No, and it's a shame we didn't get it until now.
Right.
I thought this was something that we should have gotten back whenever it occurred, which was July, which is what I heard. So not getting this until now has really impacted some drafts, and I think this guy's going to be in free fall. Honestly, this last week of so of drafts, we could see him probably around 10, 11 plus. Because I agree with you. I mean, we already have the 2 wide receiver set fears where he doesn't really come on the field during that. So that the slot role kind of limits him schematically. The Jones fracture, I just think immediately of Julio and all those Jones fracture, his recovery from the Jones fracture. And it was basically unusable. To see a guy go through this without surgery, I think is a real tough challenge and a real big ask from this Green Bay Packers medical staff to try to get this. You mentioned Matthew Golden, positive drum beats all off season.
Mm-hmm.
I think even throwing in a guy like Savion Williams as kind of that red zone weapon could also maybe take away some snaps from Reed as a different bodied kind of guy. But man, it's just it's a tough break for Jayden Reed drafters.
The other thing I'll bring up with Savion Williams, after the Packers drafted him in the 3rd round, there were a lot of people, both fantasy pundits and NFL pundits that told us that the Savion Williams draft pick is going to allow Jayden Reed to not be exposed to a lot of the hits that he was exposed to on these jet sweeps, end around, so on and so forth, because Savion Williams was going to be able to do that. And Savion Williams, a much more sturdier build type player than Jayden Reed. This is just, I mean, it's been bad all off season for Jayden Reed. There hasn't been a whole lot of good news on him, and there's been a lot of good news on Matthew Golden here. You also wonder too, with the addition of Micah Parsons, that obviously increases the talent that Jeff Hafley is going to have for this defensive unit for Green Bay. Does that put more of an emphasis on the ground game? Are you going to be able to grab leads with Jordan Love early and then grind it out with Josh Jacobs? There's certainly the potential for that as well, and maybe less of an emphasis on Jayden Reed. I might be reading too much into it, but I think that there's something there as well. Speaking of the ground game, MarShawn Lloyd, my God. This guy, you know, he had the ankle injury his rookie year that knocked him out of training camp, suffered another injury, and then had appendicitis right when he was coming back from that. Then this offseason was healthy-ish. He dealt with another ankle injury, and then he takes a nasty shot, I believe it was against the Colts, on a 34-yard wheel route catch, And I saw it. I initially thought it was a concussion. No, he actually hurt his hamstring prior to getting hit. So there was no concussion, but it was a hamstring issue, which is not good for Lloyd. This is a guy who can't stay healthy. I don't think he's draftable in 20-round drafts right now. Tyler, I'd love to get your feedback on that and whether you think that Lloyd is still a guy roster worthy at the end of your draft. And if he isn't, would you rather have a guy like Emmanuel Wilson, or would you rather have a guy like Chris Brooks on your team if something were to happen to Josh Jacobs? Or is it kind of a convoluted mess if Jacobs were to go down that literally no Packers running back has any kind of fantasy value at the moment?
It's tough. I mean, Lloyd remains awfully talented, but he's stacking injuries now in a bad way. It's a brutal way to start the career. I will say head coach Matt LaFleur is no stranger to using multiple backs when we look back at his Tennessee days. So you bringing up the ancillary backs does make sense as a last round click, where I also think you're getting a bit different in terms of some of the squads where they'll have to battle via waivers to pick up some of these late guys. But man, it's just such a shame what's happened to Lloyd, because I thought he was a super talented back that had a chance to really become a 1-2 punch there. Man, I don't really have a strong take on this, aside from I've got a lot of MarShawn Lloyd bags in best ball that are sitting pretty stale right now.
Yeah. You may be able to unpack those at this point. Well, it's best ball, so you really can't. They just stay packed. Isaiah likely dealing with an injury as well, as we continue the lower body injury conversation here with Tyler Buecher from Fantasy Guru. Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Baltimore Ravens, told reporters yesterday that likely is still expected to return in the early part of the season. I bring this up because A, he didn't go on injured reserve, which is always a good thing. And B, this was a guy that showed us his talent last year. Now, in the FFPC main event, football guys, or excuse me, Big Gorilla tournament, good Lord, you have this free look aspect, right? So when you had Isaiah Likely going off on that opening Thursday night game, he was a second-round pick in FFPC tight end premium leagues. A lot of people were believing like changing of the guards happening, where it's going to be likely he's going to have a top 5 tight end season, and he's well worth a second-round pick here. That did not come to fruition. That was Likely's best game of the season here. But I bring this up because he's flashed, Tyler. And we have seen Mark Andrews. I mean, Mark Andrews had a really bad ending to last season. We heard John Harbaugh, beg your pardon, talk about his expectation is likely to be all pro this season, which is massive. And maybe that's just a coach trying to pump up Likely. I don't know. But when you consider where he's going right now, and when you consider he's starting the season healthy or not healthy, but on the roster, and that he's expected to come back earlier or sometime early in the season, tight end 22 at the 1402. This is Mason Taylor, Jonnu Smith, Cade Otton territory. Your thoughts on Isaiah Likely as maybe one of these tight ends that comes out of nowhere, drafted in the 14th round, that really comes and makes a difference for tight end premium squads in the FFPC in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, him being healthy and avoiding that IR tag or the PUP list, that's huge news for Baltimore. This was a team that was top 5 in utilization of 12 personnel, frequently deploying 2 tight end sets. So we got both Likely and Andrews on the field. And Likely is huge for the run game. He was a top 15 run blocker per PFF's grading last year. Also super actively involved whenever he was running routes. Didn't really have a high route participation mark. I think it was right around 51 or so. But he did have a 22% target per route run mark, which was second highest on the team. So when he is running routes, he is getting targeted. I have a hang up because I believe Mark Andrews last year just got railroaded in terms of starting the season, coming back from tightrope surgery, the car crash. It just seemed like he got by through touchdowns while he was unable to be healthy and fully running routes for a while. Then the back half, we saw Mark Andrews really kind of take a step forward in terms of more involvement and more routes. And I think that's more indicative of what we'll see as he enters. I believe it's a contract year for Andrews here. So I'm a bit still skittish on Likely ever being a guy that we can start outside of maybe one of your second flexes here at FFPC. But I'm kind of bearish on it until we see Andrews maybe take a legitimate step backwards, which I don't believe we have. We just saw a really poor ending to the 2024 season, though.
It would be kind of nice if we could see a trade of Mark Andrews to like Miami or somebody who could really use a tight end. And that would really sort things out where both of these guys become very, very good for fantasy this year. And quite frankly, on Baltimore, they still both could be very, very good, although the chances are less if they stay on the same team. Marvin Mims is a player that I had the opportunity. I did draft him a few times this past weekend, but I had the opportunity to draft him a bunch, and I didn't. I'm kind of regretting it at this point. He did have a groin injury that he suffered yesterday. Luka Evans reporting today that Sean Payton saying Mims is going to be back at practice on Monday. On Sunday, Courtland Sutton was asked who he thinks the number 2 receiver on this offense is. Obviously, Sutton's number 1, and Sean Payton has gone out of his way to say each of the receivers on this team has a role. They're going to be shuffled through. We were hearing good things about Devon Vele, and then he gets traded to New Orleans. Troy Franklin has come on as far as news goes and training camp reports as a guy who's making some plays there as well. So we have to remember him. But Courtland Sutton said he believes Mims is the number 2 receiver on this team. Adam Schefter said that the team was not concerned with this groin injury at all. And when you consider that Marvin Mims still does not have the respect of FFPC drafters, as he is not going in big gorilla drafts over the last 2 days until wide receiver 55 at the 1108, although that is a little bit higher. I mentioned this before. Keenan Allen, Rashid Shaheed, Luther Burden, that's where he's going there. Number 1, do you believe he's the number 2 receiver in Denver? And then number 2, how much fantasy value does Mims have at that price, knowing the type of offense he's in and knowing who the guy is running the offense there, and Sean Payton, knowing how he likes to cycle through all these wideouts?
Yeah, back to Peyton and his rodeo. Man, it's a clown show sometimes where it's tough to know which guy to start. And like, we'll get the spike weeks, which is why I think Mims is a great best ball selection. But when we have to consider a start-sit format, you may be chasing a lot of those spike weeks. And Mims has one of the weirdest profiles from 2024 where he had a lot of manufactured touches underneath, a lot of screens and short yardage stuff. And then he also coupled that with a lot of YOLO bombs from Bo Nix, where he was able to connect on those for some big spike plays. But the all or nothing kind of format is really tough for a start sit format. So I've honestly been gravitating toward other wide receivers that you just listed there in terms of ADP, guys that are going off the board close to him. Also, I kind of think we could see Evan Ingram emerge as that number 2 option here. Guy picked up. He's, when healthy, been consistently picking up a lot of receptions these last few years in Jacksonville. I think we could see a lot of short, shallow crossers from him in this Peyton scheme. And I know they talked about the Joker. Everyone wants to plug Evan Ingram for it. I'm not there yet. I don't even think Peyton's there yet, but no. We'll see how it is. I think Ingram's a fine click. I actually really like him in the FFPC format. We're getting the 1.5 PPR, but he would probably be my bet for number 2 in terms of the second most fantasy relevant option here in the passing game.
Ideally speaking, you don't want to have Marvin Mims in your starting lineup in a perfect world. However, when you get to those bye weeks, and some of these bye weeks we'll get this season with 6 teams on bye, man, you look at the waiver wire and there's just nothing there. Marvin Mims actually turns out to be a pretty nice flex start if you have to stick him in there, if things go the way that they're going right now. Like I said, I wish I would have grabbed more of them in some of the drafts I did last week, but at least I have some. Let's move down to Miami. Jaylen Wright, a guy that I started the offseason kind of high on, and definitely have never been lower on him than I am right now. Mike McDaniel, the head coach for the Dolphins, in a Barry Jackson piece for the Miami Herald, was quoted as saying that Jaylen Wright had leg surgery, could be back September-ish, which not what you want to hear. Ollie Gordon, a guy that, and this is more of an Ollie Gordon question than Jaylen Wright, because Jaylen Wright is a guy that I have no interest in 12-team, 20-man rosters. Ollie Gordon is a player that won the I can't remember what it's called, the Doak Walker Award in 2023. Doak Walker, thank you. Where he was the best running back in college football. Had a down 2024. His team did, as well as him. And although his 2024 wasn't all that bad, his team's was really wretched. And then this is when I kind of wrote him off at the combine. I was just like, the numbers were awful. And certainly you've had people who've had bad combines like Dalvin Cook, and they went on to some really great careers. But I was just kind of out on him. And then he goes to Miami, of all places, where they already had sort of a banger in Alexander Madison. I know Mike McDaniel likes to emphasize speed on that offense. That's not how Ollie Gordon wins. So I was just kind of out on him. And yet he's looked really good in preseason. And Jaylen Wright had leg surgery. And Devon Achane is battling a calf right now. You could take Ollie Gordon, and granted his price has gone up in big gorilla drafts over the last 2 days. Wide receiver 48 at the 1109. Tyler, there's a non-zero chance that if you draft Ollie Gordon, wide receiver or running back 48, in the 11th round, you might be getting a starting running back for week 1 this season if Achane isn't ready to go. And by the way, that's just week 1. Calf injuries are tricky. Maybe Gordon makes some starts this year. He looked good, and he had a great 2023 season. We think this guy can do it. I think he still moves up boards. I still really like him at the 1109 right now. It's Ramondre Stevenson, Brian Robinson territory, but Gordon makes a lot of sense there for me.
Yeah, he's steaming up draft boards. I could see that kind of getting even a little bit higher now. Maybe he flirts with Zach Charbonnet status where, like you said, week 1, there's a solid possibility if they are like the Dolphins are doing the right thing. They're bubble wrapping Devon Achane. They're keeping him off the field. He's got a calf injury that's estimated for a 2 to 3 week injury. It happened 2 to 3 weeks prior to the season opener. So they're really up against the board there in terms of the timeline. If there is any kind of setback, or even they just want to play it cautiously and not injure this guy who their whole offense should revolve around this year, then I do think we have a chance for a week 1 starter here in round 11 here. He led the FBS in yards from scrimmage in that 2023 season, the year he got that Doak Walker Award. A lot of touchdowns, which is really huge. I mean, Miami has hit it multiple times at needing a red zone finisher. A guy like that 2023 season we saw from Raheem Mostert, where he had 18 rushing touchdowns. We saw Gordon reach the paint 22 times in that 2023 season and 14 total times, I think, last year. So this guy does have a nose for the end zone. I'm grabbing him every time I get Achane, because not only for a handcuff situation, but I also think there's the possibility that these are just 2 different roles in terms of what they offer for their offense. And Miami needs a guy like this. So he's a guy that I've been actively clicking and chasing all the way up the board, because I still think there's a lot of juice to squeeze here.
The Ollie Gordon thing is interesting because there is a certain section of drafters out there that will stay away from Tyreek Hill. They will stay away from Tua Tagovailoa. They will stay away from Jalen Waddle and even Devon Achane to a certain point, because they're worried about this offense. They're worried about this team falling apart by September or falling apart by October. And that could happen. But you know who is really not affected by that? Ollie Gordon. 1, because he's a rookie and they're going to roll. They got to roll somebody out there. Why not see what the rookie has? 2, you're paying an 11th round pick or a 12th round pick in him. So if he doesn't work out, it's really no skin off your back. And 3, this could be like a top 25 running back that you're getting in round 11, even if the Dolphins offense falls apart. And let's say Achane's battling something, you say, the heck with it. We're 1-7. Let's put him on IR, and it's the Ollie Gordon show. So again, maybe I'm wish casting a little bit on this, but I still think that everything I mentioned, there's a decent possibility of that happening, or at least a non-zero chance of it happening this year. Speaking of bad teams, New Orleans, let's go and talk about their brand spanking new quarterback in Spencer Rattler. A lot of people, myself included, thought Tyler Shough was going to win this job. He did not, and it will be the second-year player, the super sophomore Spencer Rattler, under center for week 1 for the Saints. 57% completion rate last year, 4 to 5 touchdown to interception ratio last year as a rookie. The Saints feature several playmakers that will be predicated, at least partially, on how good the quarterback is. This is not a Spencer Rattler question. He's not being drafted in the big gorilla at all. This is a Chris Olave question, an Alvin Kamara question, a Rashid Shaheed question. I happen to be still bullish on those players. Alvin Kamara, he's moved up a little bit, but he's still going in the 4th round. Chris Olave as a late 7th round pick, and then Rashid Shaheed as a late 11th round pick. Even with this news, those guys haven't moved at all. And quite frankly, even if Tyler Shough would have been announced as the starter, they probably still wouldn't have moved. How do you feel about the Saints offense this year, knowing that their quarterback situation, and also understanding Rashid Shaheed? Shaheed might be the guy I like best because it looks like he's fully recovered from his knee injury. He's getting reps in the slot, which is good. Olave, you have to pay 4 rounds of more capital compared to Shaheed, and he has all those concussion concerns. And obviously, Alvin Kamara is fairly old for a running back. So besides the quarterback situation, we do have some concerns with Olave and Kamara. I still remain of the opinion that I'm not going to target those guys, but at those prices, if they're there, I feel pretty good drafting them there. How are you handling Kamara, Olave, and Shaheed in your drafts, Tyler?
It's tough, man. I mean, the Saints offense is something that was kind of already baked into every single one of those players' ADP with the expectation of Rattler or Shough. But this still was a surprise to see Rattler take over. I mean, I was looking at EPA and completion percentage over expectation among all QBs with 100-plus dropbacks last year. He was 45th in both categories among 47 qualifying. 12.3 points per game in the 6 starts that he had last year for the Saints. 0-6 in those games. So my big concern is, can they stay on the field long enough? Rattler does benefit Kamara the most because Rattler will check down. Shuck is more of a guy that's just a howitzer with Jameis Winston YOLO type vibes where he's just chucking it down the field. So he's the beneficiary, or Shaheed and Olave would be the beneficiaries for whenever Shuck finally takes over. I'm still expecting Shuck to take over at some point sooner rather than later because I think Rattler does not belong on a starting squad. But to be honest, the fact that he beat Shuck in this quarterback battle in training camp and preseason tells you quite a bit about how poor Shuck's been playing as well. So I am just very frustrated with it. I'm doing what you're doing where I'm taking Shaheed because I'm very concerned about the concussions for Olave. He's got 5 dating back to his final year at Ohio State, and that's just been what's reported. I mean, concussions, they also stack in terms of severity and the recovery time. To get a guy almost exactly identical and Shaheed 4 to 5 rounds later is just such an obvious pivot play that I just haven't gotten around to clicking Olave at all this year. So I've been taking a lot of Shaheed, who also led the team in targets per game when he was healthy last year prior to injury. He's the guy that I'm singularly targeting now. I like Juwan Johnson in the FFPC format as a third guy, elite guy to grab, but man, it's slim pickings here in New Orleans.
Tight end 37 in the 19th round for Jauan Johnson.
That.
Tyler, did you say that Tyler Shook is shooking the ball down the field?
Yes, and it's very erratic. Yes.
Genius, yeah. That's like I've only seen oysters being shucked, but footballs, I would imagine, also being very erratic coming out of the howitzer arm, as you said, of Tyler Shook. Well, that's around the NFL, everybody. We got through a lot there. If you want to put that to good use, check out the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, $1 million grand prize. You're going to get a $50 discount on every third team you sign up for. Don't forget about the 7 Bananas promo, where if you keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row, we're going to give you escalating free teams, starting off with free FFPC Best Ball Tournament entry with $125 there, going all the way up to a free Jungle Safari for 4, valued at $50,000. How do I know it's valued at that? Because if you don't want to go on the Jungle Safari, we're just going to give you 50 grand cash. Sign up now. myffpc.com. Live drafts going on all tonight, all weekend long for the Labor Day Draftathon, which I should also mention too. We announced our charity last night on our live draft coverage of the FFPC Big Payback 5K Entry League. We are donating to gorillas.org. Every $50, every draft that we fill Labor Day draft weekend, which starts tonight at 12:30 a.m., we'll be donating $50 to gorillas.org, which helps in the preservation of gorillas and the people who live in those gorilla territories as well. So that's our cause this year. Good one for Big Gorilla. I think an appropriate one for the Big Gorilla this year as well. I want to find out what Tyler's doing as far as how he's targeting and fading certain players, and some interesting ones on this list. Trevion Henderson, who's really climbing up boards, and Emeka Egbuka, Dante Thornton, I think we still need to talk about as well. That is coming up on Target or Fade. He's Tyler Buecher from Fantasy Guru. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. This is FFPC Insider Access here in the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. We roll on after this.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm. And boy, do I have great news for you. It's that time of year. The FFPC main event is open. The flagship contest, in my opinion, the biggest #1 contest in all of fantasy football. It's not just about the prizes. You can win $1 million, but if you win a contest like this, you are gold-plated, gold-stamped in this community. That puts respect on your name when you go in there with the big dogs and you win a tournament like this. So get set up with my FFPC now. When you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more if you've never drafted there before. And you can get in there with the big dogs. If you really want, you can actually go to Vegas and draft at the Paris Casino live in these contests. You don't have to do that, though. You can draft online. They have 6-hour, 2-hour, and 60-second clocks, depending on what you're feeling. You're going to want to draft early and often in these to give yourself the best possible shot at winning. And let me tell you, when you go over to your social media bio and you throw FFPC main event champion in there, people start thinking about you at a different way. You are now an absolute champion and legend in this community if you win the FFPC main event Open now over at myffpc.com.
This is the main event draft season.
A main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
It is time for the FFPC main event. Don't forget, live drafts going on each and every night, multiple times to draft that $1 million grand prize. That competition is approaching capacity as well. You only have the NFL season starts in basically 7 days from right now. We'll have drafts going on through Saturday night, both live at Paris Casino in Las Vegas, as well as online. So you only have basically 9 days of drafting left. Don't miss out on the FFPC main event. This could be this year. Could be the year that you win that $1 million grand prize. And part of the reason you're doing it is because of the great advice from Tyler Buecher from Fantasy Guru, who joins me tonight on FFPC Insider Access. Tyler, I want to get into some targets and fades for you. Now, if you looked at the show sheet, which I know you did because you're an excellent co-host, the majority of these players are rookies. Some we've talked about already, some we haven't. But I'm going to lead things off with a veteran. And the reason I bring up this player is because Ladd McConkey is being affected in drafts by the Keenan Allen signing by the Chargers. Whether that's right or whether that's wrong, it's happening. Now, McConkey hasn't moved a ton. He is still currently going at that 2-3 turn. He was comfortably in the late second round prior to the Allen signing, and now he's kind of moved to that 212, 301 pick. Wide receiver 11 right now is where he's going. For frame of reference, for context on this, if you want to know who's going around him, you have Ladd McConkey as wide receiver 11. You have T. Higgins as wide receiver 12, A.J. Brown at wide receiver 10. Is he – I guess that I should rename the segment. Target, fade, or just draft at cost. Like, those are the three options, right? How do you feel about McConkey at that price right now?
I'll start with just saying the answer for me is fade. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, he's coming off a breakout rookie season, turned 112 targets into 1,200 receiving yards, basically, similar to Brian Thomas Jr. Both these guys were incredible yards per out run phenoms to begin their career. 30% first read rate for McConkey, turned that into a top 24 year, 15.1 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 19. But like you said, we're drafting him right now about wide receiver 11 at that 2-3 turn. I feel like we're trying to make him take a step forward where I don't necessarily see that happening, where there's a big hurdle that lies in terms of this Chargers offense wanting to go back to how they started last year, which weeks 1 through 4, they were 31st in pass rate over expectation. They want to run the ball. They just took a while to realize that Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins were not the guys to run the ball effectively. So I'm kind of out on here. I just believe that this team wants to run the ball. They eventually went away from it because they finished 27th in rush success rate because Dobbins and Edwards just couldn't get it done. But now they've got arguably one of the best prospects we've seen in a while in the running back position at Omarion Hampton here. They brought in Najee Harris on a cheap contract. I think Hampton has a chance to be an absolute bell cow right out the gate and be the guy that Harbaugh and Roman want to use as their guy. So for me, McConkey's just a really tough click at wide receiver 11, where we're expecting him to outproduce what he did last year and a wide receiver 19 finish.
You mentioned his real-life teammate, Omarion Hampton, the rookie for the Chargers. He's going almost right at the same spot as Ladd McConkey. He is going as running back 13 at the 304, so 3 picks later on average. And I'll let you answer whether you think Hampton is a target or a fade, but based on your answer of McConkey, I'm assuming you would significantly rather have Omarion Hampton this year at that 301 price than Ladd McConkey.
That's correct. Yeah, Hampton's a target for me. Like I said earlier, this year's rookie class, it was just so highly lauded and praised entering the league that I want to get as many darts on the board as they can. And in any other class that didn't feature Ashton Genty, Hampton would have been the RB1. He's a 6 foot, 221-pound athlete with a 93rd percentile speed score. He finished with back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons and 15 touchdowns behind a poor offensive line in North Carolina. The offensive line here in Los Angeles should be far improved, even with the loss of the recent tackle, which is a bit unfortunate, kind of a bummer, but not enough to go off selecting Hampton and where he's going in round 3. He's going to get the lion's share of touches right out the gate following Najee's 4th of July incident. I'm not worried about him coming in and being a 1B at all. It's really just going to be Hampton that's the guy that we really want to own. I think he's a fantastic start. Whatever you do in rounds 1 or 2, Hampton fits every single build.
There was one KFFSC best ball team that I had drafted. Tyler Warren, I drafted 3 tight ends on this roster. Tyler Warren was my top one. I drafted Colston Loveland next. And just because I said I could do it, I took Mason Taylor late. So all 3 tight ends on that team are rookies. As you're talking about this running back rookie class, Tyler, I was looking. You could get a combination of Genty, Hampton, and Harvey if you wanted as your top 3 running backs on your squad. You could probably go. I don't think you get Hampton and Henderson anymore, but you could add Croskey-Merritt onto that as well, Scadaboo. So as good as this running back class is, if you want to load up on rookies, probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. That'd be a fun exercise. I'd love to see anybody try to pull that off as well. Speaking of TreVeyon Henderson, I thought Emeka Egbuka was going to be the biggest ascendant as we get closer to live draft season in Las Vegas for the FFPC next week. But it turns out that TreVeyon Henderson had some helium in him, man. This guy has ascended big time. He has moved up to running back 14 at the 307. This is a player that was going in round 6 about a month and a half ago, somewhere around there. And now he's moved up to the mid-3rd and no end in sight for how high he is going to go. You had mentioned earlier with some of the other players we talked about the importance of understanding that a lot of these other players drafting in the Big Gorilla, the main event, and FFPC Best Ball Tournament, that they had gotten these players at significantly good values earlier. And you have to keep that in mind when you're drafting them. Is that enough to say, hey, I'm going to fade TreVeyon Henderson now that he is a mid-3rd round pick? Because I already got my bags packed in the 6th round for TreVeyon Henderson. How do you handle Henderson right now? Is he a target or a fade based and keeping in mind everything I just told you about his movement up the draft board?
Yeah, I mean, say you're drafting just one singular main event team and you're doing it this upcoming weekend or you're doing it live next week, I would still be bullishly attacking Henderson. But he would be a player I'd want to target on a squad where round 1 or round 2 I'm leaving with a running back because I don't want Henderson to be my RB1 in round 3. I do want to get access to this big play potential. I see just the absolute breakaway speed that this guy has. He averaged 7.0 yards per carry and 4.43 yards after contact his final season at Ohio State. 92nd percentile speed score, 91st percentile burst score. I think this guy is fantastic. And when we look at him and cross-compare him with Ramondre Stevenson in terms of opportunities and the ability to get the ball, Stevenson is just such a fumble-prone back with a low 3.9 yards per carry last year that I just can't get on board with saying he's a roadblock to Henderson getting the ball. Henderson is going to be Drake May's best friend. I think they're going to consistently check down to him. They're going to consistently get him out in space. He may be like a 1A, 1B to start the year, but like most explosive rookies, once we start seeing him stack positive plays week in and week out, it's going to be really tough to not give a guy like Henderson more work as the season progresses. So he may not be a confident starter for week 1 for you, but I by the time we get to the back half, we could see best case scenario, some Jahmyr Gibbs type utilization and run out with Henderson. Just given the lack of playmakers that Patriots offense has, I think he's going to be the star.
Steven Yergalos, the fantasy soprano, mentioning to me, how did you get Mason Taylor? Was I in this draft with you? I just looked it up. Yes, Steven, you were in this draft, and I was wrong. It was not Mason Taylor. It was Terrence Ferguson, another rookie tight end. So I did get 3 rookie tight ends, but it wasn't Taylor. It ended up being Terrence Ferguson to clear that up. Okay, how about a non-rookie? George Kittle is a player I have heard a lot of people talk about. Hey, McBride is nice, Bowers is nice, but Kittle might do even bigger numbers than both of them, and he's going significantly later in drafts than these guys. Tight end premium, obviously, FFPC Big Gorilla is Bowers 106, Trey McBride 111. George Kittle is now ascended up to 301. It was wild because in a non-tight end premium KFFSC main event that I was in, he actually went at the 212. And that's non-tight end premium. So he's really moving up boards. This guy continues to be a target for me. I think in the FFPC, anywhere in the 3rd round, I'd take him. I'd have to take a long look at him at the end of the second round. I don't think he'd be a target for me then, but anywhere in the third round, no matter where I'm drafting, if I already have 2 players in my roster, even if one of them is Bowers or McBride, I think Kittle is a definite target for me there. Your thoughts on whether he's a target or fade for you this year at this new 301 price point?
Yeah, Kittle's also climbed up ADP over the course of this offseason as well. But I'm kind of with you where I'm happy with Kittle anywhere in round 3. I think he's still a guy that can perform very, very well, especially with the tight end premium scoring format. I'm basically viewing it as if I've got a top 6 pick, Brock Bowers is on the board for me. If I've got a back 6 pick, I'm looking at Trey McBride. If I am squeezed out of either one of those spots, then I'm looking at Kittle in round 3. That's kind of my loose outline for how I'm approaching these tight end premium drafts this year. But on a per game basis, if we look past Kittle's rookie year, on a per game basis, tight end 1, tight end 3, tight end 1, tight end 3, tight end 4, tight end 2, tight end 6, consistently up there. He's been super productive, not just in the fantasy aspect, but also in yards per route run. He's been tight end 1 in yards per route run in 6 of 7 seasons. He's finished last year number 3 among all tight ends in receiving yards, cleared 900 plus yards in 5 of 7. Throwing all the turnover at wide receiver, all the injuries that we've talked about here at the beginning of the show, I think another high-end fantasy finish is definitely in line for the All-Pro. He's the easiest click for the elite tight end path. You just kind of now have to pay a little bit more than you did earlier, which I'm fine with because he's proven it time and time again.
You mentioned your strategy at tight end and tight end premium. It's basically my strategy, even in non-tight end premium. Try to get one of these top 3 guys. And then after, if they all go off the board and I miss on them, I'll have to figure it out later. At what point do you look at figuring out tight end once those top 3 are off the board, Tyler? I missed out on the top 3 and this past weekend in a few drafts. And a couple of times I took Sam Laporta. A couple of times I waited until like the 8 or 9 of them were off the board. And I went, I don't know, Ertz and Kraft or something like that, where you get like this proven guy and this potential superstar. At what point do you start targeting tight ends once Kittle, McBride, and Bowers are all long gone?
Yeah, in tight end premium, I'd probably put that pin around like tight end 10-ish or so, where I'm trying to get maybe a Tyler Warren and a Loveland and combine that with a Jake Ferguson and a Dallas Goedert, maybe give me that kind of combination where I can do like you just said, the veteran and the upside rookie play and lean on those 2 guys while grabbing a third tight end late. Usually Juwan Johnson, like another guy that we've been talking about, because he's super cheap.
Harold Fannon's another guy I think is interesting super late too.
There's a lot of young rookies that are going super late that are very, very interesting. I'll also throw Terrence Ferguson, the guy you drafted in that sample you were just talking about. I mean, this was the Rams' first pick in this year's draft and in round 2. I really like that guy as a prospect coming out of Oregon. But yeah, that's kind of my backup plan if I don't get one of the elite guys. Usually tight end 10 is when I start making the pivot to the position.
There were reports, too, that if the Rams did not trade out of the first round with Atlanta, that they were going to take Terrence Ferguson in the first round. So we could add a third first-round tight end in the draft this year as well. The rookie talk is going hot and heavy here. We're going to continue it with Teteroa McMillan. McMillan is a player that was the number 2 wide receiver drafted behind Travis Hunter in this draft, although he only plays wide receiver. McMillan is a player that really has been ascending up draft boards. I think he slipped a little bit when he was dealing with the hamstring injury, but now that he's come back and looking good. And there was, and I can't remember, I think it was Ben Gretsch was writing about this, and I didn't realize it, but there was a play in Carolina's last preseason game where Andy Dalton had Teteroa McMillan wide open on a bomb, and basically all he had to do was get it there, and he hit his arm on a defender's arm or a helmet or something. The ball ended up falling short, but McMillan, if he catches that 55-yard touchdown, he goes up even more this year. With the trade of Adam Thielen, man, it is wheels blanking up for McMillan. He is going to get so many targets this year. I know there's some people that are still on the Coker train with him, playing more in the slot, and we know that there's going to be some fantasy goodness for him as well. But McMillan, 130, 140, 150 targets this year. I like Carolina's offense. The price is going up for McMillan as well. He is now a mid-4th round pick. He's moved ahead of Xavier Worthy. He's moved ahead of Terry McLaurin. He's moved ahead of Devontae Adams. I think he always was ahead of Marvin Harrison. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. He's kind of going right next to those guys anyway. So my point is, like, from that 4.3 to 4.8, there's a lot of receivers going in there. I didn't mention Garrett Wilson and Mike Evans, but they're also in that territory as well. Can you still target Tedderone and McMillan there, or are you just kind of taking like how you feel like that day and grabbing one of those guys with really no allegiance to any of them? Specifically talking though about McMillan here in this question.
Yeah, it's a deep tier where it's really kind of pick your flavor. And I wouldn't fault anybody for going with McMillan. I'm on the same path of you of 140 plus targets could definitely be in the fold here for McMillan. 6'4", 220-pound receiver. He's basically the Carolina Panthers solution to getting beat up for a decade by Mike Evans. They went out and got their own version. Big play receiver out of Arizona, clearing 1,300 plus receiving yards over the last 2 years. Very high yards per out run mark. A very clear good wide receiver in contested catch situations as well. Top 10 in yards per out run against man coverage, both 2023 and 2024. So he can win in a variety of routes. And I'm just amazed kind of at the ADP that we're seeing here, where I liken him this to like how Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. were going last year. And I just think we're getting a pretty good discount on a guy that's the number 8 overall selection in this year's draft. And I laugh at his receiving yardage prop for the year, 800 yards. I'm like, this guy could clear this by the time we get to week 14. So yeah, I think McMillan's a very, very strong play. He's going to be that intermediate deep option that will become Bryce Young's go-to guy that picks up chunk gains. And should we not fall into that Andy Dalton situation? Shout out Ben Gretsch, fantastic analyst. Follow his Substack for some great stuff in season. But yeah, I think McMillan's a guy that you want to have in every format. Start, sit, redraft. And in home leagues, you're getting him 7, round 8, round 9. You're getting a great discount on McMillan in home leagues.
Target share is going to be out of control for him in Carolina this year. The volume is going to be there. He is not going to, if he misses on being a mid-4th round pick for you this year, it will not be because he didn't get the opportunity. He's going to get the opportunity. He's going to get a bunch of opportunities. He's probably going to get 10 to 12 opportunities every single game. Another player who was also drafted in the 1st round as a wide receiver in the same NFC South division was Emeka Egbuka, a player that from the get-go, we have heard, similar to Matthew Golden, right? We've heard nothing but positive things from the beat writers, from his coaches, from his teammates. Baker Mayfield, I always thought this was interesting too. I mean, like, I can't remember if this is mini camp or when training camp opened. He opened up his press conference by walking up to the podium and basically talking, like, not even asked, like, didn't even say hello. And he just started talking about how great it is to be throwing passes to Emeka Egbuka, what a great professional he's going to be, how he's ready to hit the ground running. Everything we're hearing about Egbuka is good. The only problem is if you are drafting him, you got to buy into the hype because he is going as wide receiver 28 at the 5'10 right now. Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith going around it. Maybe buying into the hype isn't the worst thing in the world. Chris Godwin is still, despite him not being placed on PUP, he is still, according to Tampa today, not expected to be back until like week 5-ish. And this is another player who had a really, really significant, brutal injury last year. It didn't stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from paying him that contract extension. However, it maybe caused them to invest in Emeka Egbuka in the 1st round of the draft this year. He could be the Godwin replacement. The way Mike Evans is talking about retirement, ultimately maybe Egbuka is the Evans replacement. Either way, this year, is he a target for you or is he a fade? Wide receiver 28 at the 5'10 is the new price that you're paying for Egbuka.
And I'd pay more for him. I'll be honest. I think this is a guy that I want to chase up the board. We saw general manager Jason Light talk about him being a pick for now and the future. And knowing Godwin was coming off injury, knowing Evans is on the back 9 of his career, throw in McMillan's neck injury, which keeps him out until week 9, there's a good chance we see him, like Buka, hit the ground running here as a really dependable fantasy asset. Keep in mind this offense, they're going under a new offensive coordinator, but they are going to be a team that maintains their pass rate over expectation. They were top 10 in the stat last year, which was run by their pass game coordinator, who is now their offensive coordinator. So I envision a lot of things being retained in terms of that element. This guy was the number 1 wide receiver prospect in the 2021 recruiting class. He lived up to that billing, finishing his career at Ohio State with the most receptions ever by a wide receiver, which is notable given all the wide receivers that have come out of there as of late. Great size-speed combo, inside-out versatility. He's a chess piece that can move all over. And like he said with that Baker quote, he's just a very polished prospect. Mm-hmm. I anticipate a very minimal learning curve. I think immediate wide receiver 3 value with a ceiling for more is what we're looking at here with Egbuka. So I want to get him on as many teams as possible this year.
You said you'd pay more. Let's just do a quick would you rather on Egbuka. Would you rather draft Emeka Egbuka or Jamison Williams?
Oh, JMO.
Would you rather draft Emeka Egbuka or George Pickens?
Pickens. Oh, sorry, man. You're getting on my flag plants there. Those are two guys that I really
I asked because I love both those players this year as well. I think they're going to be smashes at their ADPs. What about this guy? I'm not on this guy, but he is going higher than Emeka Egbuka. Emeka Egbuka or DK Metcalf?
Egbuka.
Egbuka or Cortland Sutton?
Egbuka.
Egbuka or Xavier Worthy?
Ooh. I might go Worthy there for the upside.
Okay. Last one, Emeka Egbuka or Terry McLaurin?
Terry McLaurin. I still think there's a lot of fantasy value there in Washington.
To your point, you said you'd pay more for Egbuka, and you went as high as Cortland Sutton, where you said you'd still take Egbuka. He's going a full round ahead of Egbuka. So true to your word, you would pay another round's worth to get Egbuka on your roster this year. What would you pay for Travis Hunter? Because that's the next player we're going to be talking about here. I don't know if you have any insight. I was talking with one of my other co-hosts from my local fantasy football show here in Northeast Wisconsin, and he was saying he's still not convinced that Travis Hunter isn't going to play a ton of defensive snaps, maybe at the detriment to his offensive snaps. I don't see that happening, but I certainly allow for the possibility that it could. Wide receiver 33 for Hunter right now. This is Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Jalen Waddle territory. Is he a target or a fade for you, Tyler Buecher? Wide receiver 33 at the 6'10" for Travis Hunter right now.
He is a target, and I think you can make an argument that he could be a better click than guys like Zay Flowers and those guys that you just listed there. Namely because I think there's a lot of volume to be had in Jacksonville. The exodus of Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk really paves the way for a lot of targets to be open, with him operating as the 1A, 1B with Brian Thomas Jr. But these guys are going to operate in very different roles, with Brian Thomas Jr. being more the intermediate and deep option, Hunter being more the short to intermediate option, where Hunter, a fantastic receiving prospect. He's got the accolades, the Heisman, the Beletnikoff, the Chuck Bednarik, all kinds of different stats and things that he accumulated during his time at Colorado. But where I expect him to flourish this year is kind of operating in last year's Chris Godwin role, where one of the big things that we saw from Liam Cohen last year was really lower Baker Mayfield's average depth of throw. So they were able to get more high percentage looks on first down specifically. It led to higher completion or higher conversion rates on second down, third down. It just put them ahead of the chain, so to speak, in terms of being able to keep their offense on the move. Trevor Lawrence is coming off a year where he was top 5 in percentage of passes that went 20 plus yards downfield. He was number 2 in air yards per pass, 9.4 air yards per attempt. So I'm expecting Cohen's biggest change to really come in this offense of Lawrence lowering his deep shots and seeing a lot more slot work for Travis Hunter and get him more in a chain moving capacity. Him being a really good PPR asset. I think it's just going to let them play better offense and stay on the field longer. And again, I mean, Chris Godwin last year, weeks 1 through 7, tied with Jamar Chase for the wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per game. That's hyper appealing, and I'm not expecting it to be an apples to apples thing there, but I do think there's a path where Hunter puts up a really high floor, and I'm not worried about this defensive thing that everyone seems to be worried about, given what we've heard from Coach Speak Index, given what we've heard everything from everyone from the GM down to the coaches. I expect Hunter to be actively involved. When you trade up to the number 2 spot, you give up what they gave to get him. He's going to be the centerpiece of this passing attack in the short to intermediate area.
To your point, I would rather have him than Rashee Rice. I would rather have him than Zay Flowers. I think I would lean towards him over Jalen Waddle as well, although I kind of go back and forth on that. And I think I think I did draft Ricky Pearsall over Travis Hunter in most of my drafts where I took Pearsall. But that's another conversation that if, I still got two or three more drafts to go. That's another conversation I'm going to have to figure out with myself to figure out, hey, maybe I should, I know Hunter's going later than him. Hunter's 6'10" and Pearsall's at 6'05", but at that point we're picking at nits. So Hunter may be a player that I'll have to look at maybe more in the early to mid 6 rather than late. We got a question from Twitch right now. Dummy Man Pluto has a question. I'm assuming this is a local league here. He has the opportunity to trade Austin Eckler to snare the services of Najee Harris. He already has Omarion Hampton, and then he would be essentially cuffing Harris to Hampton. Thank you, Dummy Man Pluto. Here's Tyler. I'll just give you my thoughts on this. When I'm drafting in a big national tournament or anything like that, I'm not interested in my own handcuffs. I want other people's backup running back so I can increase the variance of my score in the big money weeks later on at the end of the season. However, in a closed 12-team league, I kind of do like having the backup running back to my starter as long as it doesn't cost me a lot and as long as I'm not investing a lot of draft capital into it. This one's interesting. I think I would make the deal and get Harris just because I don't know what's going on. It could honestly blow up in my face. But I don't think that Eckler is the type of guy that's going to all of a sudden rush for 1,100 yards or even 1,100 scrimmage yards at this point of his career with Croskey-Merritt there. And then obviously with Rodriguez taking short yardage. You also have the Deebo Samuel factor there too in Washington. So given that I'm giving up Eckler and I get Harris, I'd be cool with that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I follow the same sentiment of how I like to handcuff, and it's very rare. Usually I'm going after other players' handcuffs where I've got the ability, once a player goes down, to have multiple options at my disposal. I can play it based off matchups, based off fantasy point expectation. That's how I like to play. But in a home league where you are looking for floor a bit more than ceiling, sure, I think in certain situations you can handcuff. Najee, again, I mean, I feel kind of bad for this guy. Like, he was given this decent contract. I think it was a 1 year, $6 million contract.
Yeah.
At the start of free agency. Fine. Like, I mean, this was a guy who got by in volume in Pittsburgh. We all know that he wasn't really spectacular in breakaway runs or anything particularly notable fantasy wise, outside of that Ben Roethlisberger check down year. But then he gets railroaded by the team a month later, drafting Omarion Hampton at 22 overall, where I don't think they ever envisioned Hampton falling to them at 22, because at 21 was Denver, who was highly rumored to be in the mix for running back. And it just kind of unseated what Najee was in line for. Then you throw in the 4th of July incident. I think he's fine. He's not really a player I'm looking at. I think I would view this more in the context of, do you need floor points? Because floor points, I think you have a better path via Eckler. It depends on the other RBs you have here in this situation. If you don't need floor points, then I'd be fine handcuffing.
Makes perfect sense to me, and I'm with you on that. I'm glad you brought up floor points too. That makes a lot of sense for Eckler and how this league is structured. Okay, Dante Thornton, we have to talk about him. This is a player that apparently is higher up on the depth chart than Jack Besh right now, who was drafted in the second round by the Vegas Raiders. The Athletic's Tashawn Reed, who covers Las Vegas for that publication, believes that Besh is the 4th receiver in the rotation. He's backing up Jacoby Myers, who quite frankly did request a trade. And it was on that day that he requested a trade that the Raiders also decided to sign one Amari Cooper. Now, I think Amari Cooper is much closer to dust than useful at this point of his career, but he is going to have the opportunity in Las Vegas. Thornton has just been like, ever since minicamp, man, this is a guy that the Raiders keep talking up. They're very impressed by him. They've been giving him reps that rookies, third-day rookies don't normally get, but he's been performing. Super tall, big body, and he's super fast as well. Sort of a throwback to the Raiders receivers of yore. When you think about Dante Thornton, and I understand like this is not exactly like a round 3 or 4 pick. He's going as wide receiver 65 in the 15th round, but he's going next to guys like Adam Thielen, Wan'Dale Robinson, Xavier Legette. If I'm shooting for the moon there, if I'm swinging for home runs, Robinson, Thielen, Legette, those guys are singles, maybe doubles. Thornton, yeah, maybe he's not a single or a double, but there's a chance he could be a home run there. Your thoughts on Dante Thornton, whether he's a target or a fade as wide receiver 65 in the 15th?
I'll be honest, I got a tough time with these Tennessee wide receivers. They're really tough for me to evaluate from like a film perspective, kind of with their offensive scheme being kind of Mickey Mouse-ish. But Thornton is a fantastic prospect when we look at like the size, 6'5", the speed, 4'3". So it really wasn't surprising at all to me to see these camps lead with him getting a lot of buzz. Like, these are the types of players, these speed freaks, that should be making plays when everyone is in the shorts and t-shirts. But to see the steady drumbeat continue over the summer, where he was looking good, elevating up the depth chart, playing with starters. And then we top it off with the final preseason game where he ended with a touchdown. Mm-hmm. I kind of really like the click here. I'm getting a bit more into it. I don't believe Amari Cooper has anything left in the tank. Just could not separate at all during that final year in Buffalo. Big reason why they went out and got Josh Palmer was because neither Amari Cooper nor Keon Coleman could separate on the outside, while Josh Palmer was top 5, I believe, in that stat, average separation score. So I think there's a chance that we see Thornton be the DK Metcalf guy, the vertical guy for Gino to lean on. And I mean, he's a very just different weapon than what Jack Bash or Jacoby Myers offers. So I think the role here is here to stay. And he's just a bigger, maybe faster version of what they had in Trey Tucker.
The pick in the 15th round, we always say this too. The Dow of Baker Boy, Joe Delzner, a longtime FFPC player. There's no such thing as a bad pick after the 10th round. So spend it how you want, and certainly if you want to spend it on Thornton, I think there's a lot worse ways you could do it. In that same vein, I want to bring up Jalen Royals here, a player that I did draft in a few spots last weekend. I think it's interesting that Royals, who was showing out in late July, like when training camp started, and then he was sort of like playing with the starters significantly. And when the starters were sitting, he wasn't out there either. He was sitting as well. We know Rashee Rice is going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season. I don't envision a situation for you, or at least an ideal situation, where you want to draft and play Jalen Royals in those first 6 games. But Hollywood Brown is hurt. Rice, as you mentioned earlier, coming off an injury as well. Is there something there? He's wide receiver 93 in the 19th round. I don't think we have to make much of a case to say that, Jalen Royals isn't necessarily a target in the classical sense, but in the 19th round, when I know the other options out there, maybe he should be a 19th round target, Tyler.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, it's been years since we've seen a full season out of Hollywood Brown. Xavier Worthy's 165 pounds. Rashee Rice returning from injury and the suspension. And keep in mind, general manager Brett Veach let go of a lot of their veteran wide receivers this free agency period. So the depth chart really got reshuffled in terms of the guys behind the big 3 names I just mentioned. So for anyone that's unfamiliar with Royals' game, he is a legitimate downfield burner. He tied Texas Matthew Golden for the fastest 10-yard split in the 40, and that's reflected in his game. Per Dane Brugler, Royals' 10 catches of 50-plus yards over the last 2 years was number 1 in the FBS. Kind of gives me a little Tyreek Hill vibes. He averaged just shy of 120 yards per game his final season, 3.00 yards per out run. He's a consistent click for me in best ball offseason, but I like taking him in a format like this where you're 19, 20 rounds. And if it pans out being nothing, okay, fine. You just mix and match your waiver wire. You reshuffle it. But this guy, I mean, we've already got Rice out of the picture. Brown hasn't participated for I think a month almost. And he just seems like an easy click. This team wants to throw the ball deep. They just haven't been able to, namely because of pressure. They got that left tackle out of Ohio State, Simmons. I think that's finally going to be their solution to what they've been looking for. We're going to be able to see Mahomes not have to scramble and create the playmaker mode that we're so akin to seeing and used to seeing, where he can stand in the pocket and deliver some vertical shots to a guy like Royals. So I like him quite a bit. I think he's a very fun click and a very exciting click.
He is. Royals is the type of guy, like there's a lot of times where I was running out of receivers. Like normally I like to have my receivers done by the 19th round because there's just not that much out there. There's plenty of times where if I needed one, I could usually count on Royals being out there. And I got him, and I was happy about that for sure. Royals, obviously not the most popular redraft selection. However, we did see him go in dynasty leagues. And if you want to play dynasty 365 days a year, fantasy football, that's what dynasty is. Check out myffpc.com. We have startup dynasty leagues going on there. The entry fees start at $100. They go all the way up to $5,000. So whatever your budget is, we'll have a league for you there. We've had, we now run more than 2,000 dynasty leagues over at myffpc.com. We've had 0 leagues fold in a decade and a half. Once you are playing dynasty with the FFPC, you are in it for as long as you want to be in it. And that can be found once again at myffpc.com. Fantasy Guru's own Tyler Buecher joining me here on FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. We have to play a Would You Rather game. We're going to do that next, involving I think the fun one is going to be Derrick Henry and Ashton Genty, because I know you've done extensive research on those two guys, specifically in this. I want to talk about Braylon Allen. We haven't touched on him yet. And, of course, Mr. Taylor Swift. We have to bring up him as well in the Would You Rather conversation. That's all coming up with Tyler Buecher from Fantasy Guru. This is FFPC Insider Access right here on the Better Sports Network.
We're drafting
season.
a main event team on FFPC $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
It is time for the FFPC main event. If you are looking tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 3 spots open there. 3 spots open as well at 1 p.m. tomorrow. So if you want to get draft late tonight, or if you want to draft early tomorrow at 1 o'clock and kick off your Labor Day weekend in style, check that out at myffpc.com. $1 million is what's going to be awarded to the first place finisher in that. myffpc.com. Jump in the $6 million prize pool with the FFPC main event as well. myffpc.com. We're sitting here tonight with one Tyler Buecher. By the way, season 4 premiere of the FFPC Insider Access show. Always good to have this cranked up for another year, which is always awesome. And no better person to lead it off with than Fantasy Guru's own Tyler Buecher at Tyler Buecher on the X as well. Let's play a Would You Rather a game here. And this is we're still in the draft season. So I'm going to put this to you as if you're on the clock, you've made up your mind that you're taking one of these 2 players that I'm putting against you. Tyler, you cannot say, Balky, I'm not taking either one. I'm going to take this guy. That's not the game. We cannot do that. That's not part of the game. You have to pick one of these 2 players. So in the first round, we'll kick it off there. You've made up your mind. You're taking a running back. Would you rather draft Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey? I feel like I've asked this of multiple people this year, and I haven't gotten the same answer every time. Tyler, how would you answer this?
Yeah, we're starting off with a bang here.
Yes.
With these 2, we can throw out the injury discussion. I think it's kind of offsetting. What I'm looking at more here is utilization, which gives the nod to Christian McCaffrey. His offense is going to lead to much more passing opportunities for Christian McCaffrey relative to what CMC will earn, relative to what Saquon will earn in Philly. And since joining San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey is averaging 5.7 targets per game in the healthy games. He's played over 50% of the snaps. We know that targets are worth roughly 50% the value of a carry. And that's the real reason why I'm kind of leaning into CMC. Niners could lean on CMC even more in 2025, given all the wide receiver injuries they've sustained. And excluding last year, where we'll just call it what it was, a terrible year, CMC has finished RB1, RB2, RB8, RB1, and RB5 in half PPR fantasy points per game, dating back to 2018, the year after his rookie season. So I like to view this question as, what do you get when you are right? And when I'm in these kind of contests, CMC has the ability to not only be the top scoring running back, but be the type of person that can lead you to the top of a leaderboard and get you that $1 million that we're seeking in these large field contests. He also isn't really dependent on big play touchdowns, which are naturally going to regress. Saquon Barkley, 13 of 20 scores last year came from 20 plus yards out. We saw a lot of those short yardage red zone touchdowns really go more in the Jalen Hurts direction. And backs coming off 450 plus carries over the last 20 years, all of them have seen a decline in fantasy points per game. Very few of them have stayed healthy. And Saquon's coming off 482 touches. That's a ton for 1 year. I'm going to go with CMC, who's looked fantastic in camp this year and has a limited competition for touches in this sparse 49ers offense right now.
What are the bets you've been making on Barkley this year? I mean, are you more often than not fading him and grabbing somebody else, regardless of who it is in the first round, because of that usage that you're talking about, what he did last year, and historically how other running backs have performed the year after? I mean, to me, you can make a pretty strong case that this guy should not be being selected in the first round. He is going there, but you can make a pretty strong case that he's the easiest fade in the first round.
It's really easy to fade too when you have Justin Jefferson going right next to him, or CD Lamb. These are easy pivots.
I think that I'm with you on this. I'd rather have McCaffrey over Barkley. This next one is opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You have the old alien in Derrick Henry. Seemingly, he should have broken down long ago, and he has not. He is still a touchdown machine. He is still a beast and running over people, and sometimes running past people as well, something we don't often see from a 31-year-old running back, but he's been defying the odds. Flip it to the other end, where you have this young, up-and-coming rookie in Ashton Genty, a guy who was drafted in the top 10 of the draft, a player that, granted, did not go up against a lot of Power 5 competition in college, but still did a ton of numbers. And it's not like he peed down his leg when he was facing tough competition. He showed out then too. So you have the old veteran, you have the rising rookie. Who would you rather draft, Derrick Henry or Ashton Jeanty?
I'm going to go with the old veteran, which is a bit of a surprising answer for me because generally I tend to prioritize these pass catching backs, given what I just talked about with CMC, the value of targets. But Henry's first year in this Baltimore offense, an absolute smashing success, carried the ball for 1,900 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. And Baltimore's rushing attack was elite on so many different levels. I'm just going to rattle off some stats real quick. They were top 5 in EPA per rush success rate, early down success rate, yards before contact, yards after contact, EPA per rush between the tackles, EPA per rush outside the tackles, explosive rush rate.
They were top five in all those?
Across the board in all those.
Okay.
This is just a well-oiled machine that Todd Monken's put together. And the final piece was Derrick Henry. Throw in the fact that I think that there's a chance that we see some passing touchdown regression from Lamar Jackson, who led the league with an 8.6% passing touchdown rate, 4 percentage points above league average. That's a phenomenal year for him, but it's also likely to go back a bit. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Derrick Henry with a 20 touchdown campaign, a 2K rushing yard season. There were zero signs of slowing down. Look at the playoff games. He tore up Pittsburgh. And then he also had a ton of those next-gen stats runs where he clocked over 20 plus miles per hour. He was right in line with many of the elite backs. So I'm not worried about him slowing down. This dude is an alien, and I'm going to keep investing in this alien until he retires.
The other side of the coin here in Jeanty, sometimes I feel like, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this when I play fantasy football. Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to not take a bust, or I'm trying to find the lowest chance of a bust with my first round pick, or maybe my first and second round pick. And then I start swinging for home runs and doubles a little bit later. And I think, and it's weird to say this because he's a rookie and he's never played a real regular season NFL snap. Sometimes I feel like Ashton Jeanty is one of the most lower risk first round picks we have this year. And there's some comfort in that. Do you see it the same way? Is he a low risk to be a bust this year? I mean, obviously barring injury and so on and so forth.
I think the risk would be it's a brand new organization, brand new coaching staff, brand new scheme, brand new, a lot of things across the board for Las Vegas, where that much turnover, there might be some learning curves and speed bumps along the way. But I mean, usage and utilization, they drafted this guy as, was it 6th overall, if I'm not mistaken, or 5th overall? 6th. What they're going to do is just lean on him like crazy because I think that's going to be the focal point of their offense. They're going to be a run-oriented attack that leans on Brock Bowers in the pass game, but it's going to be as much Jeanty and Bowers that this Raiders offense can throw at you.
I hesitate to remember exactly what pick he was in the first round. I was at the NFL draft in Green Bay with my son, who's 11 years old, and he was obsessed with they had, the NFL puts up all these experiences there. He was obsessed with the thing where they give you footballs and you got to throw them into the nets, downfield or whatever. Yep. And rather than stand in line that went, forever, he just stood behind the nets outside the fence, would grab the balls that went over and then try to throw them back in the opposite way. And it wasn't until because we were missing the first few picks while we were doing this. And it wasn't until I said, son, the Raiders just took Ashton Jeanty. We are missing it. And he's like, all right, let's go. Like once Jeanty got picked, I feel like he was activated. And then we saw the rest of the first round. Fun time. Is it a fun time deciding between James Cook and Kenneth Walker? It's not for me. I mean, I look at these two guys, Cook, similar to the narrative we said with McLaurin, right? With the regression coming. And obviously he had the contract thing that McLaurin did. So I think even though these things get resolved, we still have to understand that they have red flags, based that had nothing to do with financial reasons. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, is a player I really like this year. I like the addition of the new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, who's going to come up there and not pass the ball all the time like Ryan Grubb did last year, which is why he was let go from Seattle. But then he's dealing with this injury, and then Charbonnet looked awesome, and we know that they want to get Charbonnet more involved because he is a highly pedigreed running back that went in the second round a couple of years ago. This is not an easy click either between James Cook or Kenneth Walker. Who would you rather draft, Tyler?
I'm going to skew toward Kenneth Walker here, and I do like the scheme, like you mentioned, Clint Kubiak, run game coordinator Rick Dennison. They're going to put Walker in a position to put up big plays. Coming out of Michigan State, that was his forte, big plays. We saw him do it pretty often. their outside zone scheme is perfect for a home run hitter like this, who, I mean, we saw his explosive run rate dip in 2024, but it was relatively high in 2023 where he was top 20 in the stat. So if he can get back to that, maintain last year's strong forced missed tackle rate where he was RB1, 0.31 forced missed tackles per rush, I think Walker should be aligned for a lot of big plays, a lot of fantasy rich outings. And that's just the rushing attack. We throw in the pass game element where Clinton Kubiak is not afraid to utilize his backs as pass catching targets. Look at no further than Alvin Kamara last year. Kenneth Walker, he averaged 4.8 targets per game in 2024. That was a 14% target share. That buoyed his fantasy value to a career high mark of 16.5 fantasy points per game. He was the RB12. I think he's aligned for another big season, and he's really well insulated game script wise because of that big play ability to score from anywhere, and if they're trailing, the passing work. So he's the guy that I want to target. James Cook, I'm kind of shy on for touchdown regression for sure. But what makes me more skittish is the fact that he was RB 27 in touches per game last year, averaging just 15.3 touches per game. So I'm a big volume drives fantasy points for the RB position. So I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker.
The most insanely efficient running back season we've seen since Devon Achane, maybe from James Cook last year. When you consider, and just to piggyback on your point, by the way, I would lean towards Walker as well. The other thing to keep in mind with James Cook, running back 15 at the 309. Bear in mind, like everything that has to go right for him to pay off at that price. A, he's got to stay on the field on third downs more than he did last season when Ty Johnson took over. I don't see that changing. If anything, Ray Davis is going to get more snaps for Buffalo this year. He successfully fended off Ray Davis most of the season, and he had such an insane amount of touchdowns. And this is all coming on a team that has a quarterback that's really, really good at the goal line and inside the 5, quite frankly, inside the 10 as well, as far as rushing the ball. Could everything go right for James Cook again? Yeah. Could he score 20 touchdowns or whatever in 2025? Absolutely. Is that likely to happen? No, probably not. Can he pay off 309 ADP without doing that? No, I think definitively he cannot do that, which is why I'm not paying that. Are you sick of me asking myself questions? Yes, we are. So we're going to move on to the next one. Braylon Allen. Here's another riser too, Tyler. Braylon Allen for the Jets or Cam Skattebo. I was team Skattebo over Tyrone Tracy most of drafting season. The hamstring stuff popped up, and he obviously lost some valuable snaps. Tyrone Tracy, who fumbled like it was a bodily function last year, obviously had some problems catching the ball too. I think it was Jordan Renan reported that it wasn't even a battle. Like this is Tracy with the ones all the time. Skattebo not even involved. Now, I don't know if that lasts all season and we play a season-long game. We're talking about a season-long game here. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that Skattebo could overtake Tyrone Tracy at some point, but he's definitely not doing it for the start of the season. And then you have Braylon Allen. It sounds like they want to use not only Allen Hall, but Isaiah Davis as well when he's healthy. I think Bob Harris from Football Guys said the Jets' goal this season is to lead the league in rushing attempts, which makes perfect sense because if they do that, it means their rushing game's effective and they're executing their offense well and their defense is playing well enough to keep them in games. So when you consider that Braylon Allen and Cam Skattebo are going right next to each other right now, who would you rather draft between those two young running backs?
This might be my most controversial one. I'm going to go with Skattebo. And I got a couple of reasons. I really like investing in some of these ambiguous backfields. And we did get the clarity that, yes, Tracy was running with the ones. But I just don't buy that Tracy's a long for the position running back outside of being like more of a pass-catching Austin Eckler kind of guy. He's a wide receiver convert. The fumble problem I don't think is ever going to go away. And I just view Skattebo as being more of the long-term solution. With Tracy being more of a change of pace option because Skattebo has legitimate every down potential. Led the nation in total missed tackles forced his final season, broke the PFF record, compiled insane yards from scrimmage production, rushing and receiving combined. So he can do it both, rushing and receiving, rivaling that of elite superstars back when they were prospects. I mean, he's not a speed demon, but we talked about this a few times. Not every back needs to be a 4-3 burner. Some of these guys just need patience to let their blocks develop. And the Giants' offensive line may need that time to develop those blocks. It's certainly not an elite one. The Jets definitely have the edge there. But I think Skattebo has a cleaner path to usurping his RB1, quote unquote, on his team. After injuries have given him a slow start in camp, he's just kind of got the uphill battle to climb. He's more of a second half stash where you draft now and just kind of wait, or maybe you pick him off waivers after people are sick of Tracy being the starter. but I think there's a chance where he can take over the RB1 role, where Braylon Allen would need a Breece Hall injury in order to take over that RB1 role.
This is going to lead in my next one, but before we get there, Dallas picked up 2 first-round picks today. I'm not saying that they would trade their first-round picks, but maybe the fact that they have now 4 first-rounders in the next 2 years might make them more apt to trade a lesser pick. We know that they've given up a 4th-rounder for Jonathan Mingo. This is a leading question. You think Breece Hall makes his way to Dallas? Do you think Breece Hall is on the Jets roster come week 1?
That would be fascinating, and I would be very much more interested in Breece Hall. I've already taken
Braylon Allen then, right?
And Braylon Allen as a byproduct, yeah, for sure. I've already taken some unders on Javonte Williams, so that would really help me in terms of my fantasy outlook for the season. That's interesting. I haven't thought about Breece in Dallas, but
it's one of those things too. Like normally I just don't think about trades, and then something like this happens today, and then all of a sudden it comes to the forefront of my mind. And obviously the Jets, they probably take the draft capital. I know they like Braylon Allen. I know they like Isaiah Davis. So there might be something there. There might not be something there.
Yeah, I think the only pushback I would have is they were hesitant to pay Micah. Are they going to pay? Or they're going to trade for a back that they'll then have to pay in Breece?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point too. Who hasn't looked, by the way, like himself since he tore his ACL, too. That's another thing. Okay, you mentioned Javonte Williams. This is the last running back one we're going to do. Bichelle Tootin, who is maybe the number 3 in Jacksonville right now, or Javonte Williams, who's the number 1, apparently, in Dallas. You have to pick one of these guys. I know you don't like Javonte Williams. Neither do I. Do you dislike him enough to take Bichelle Tootin over him?
Yeah, and I have been. I mean, this click, I think, well, if you're looking at it from a redraft lens and like a big gorilla or main event, it should come down to how you've structured your team so far. Whether you've entirely punted running back and need those cheap early points in the year, then maybe go Javonte. But I'm much more willing to wait for the second half of the season where I could have a potential weekly starter in Tootin. We've seen just a very, very poor campaign from Travis Etienne last year. Tank Bigsby, to me, is rather one-dimensional. Tootin is a very high RAS athlete, relative athletic score, 9.56 out of 10, 4.32 speed, very strong in yards after contact per attempt, very strong in missed tackles forced per attempt. These are the stats that I like to look at when I'm looking at running backs, and I just prefer the upside play in Tootin. I just think he's a chance to house any touch through the ground or through the air. You just need to be patient. He may not. He's the kind of guy you just marinate on fantasy benches, hoping for a back half where you can start him.
Not only is this the position in the draft where you are drafting for ceiling and not floor, you have a situation where Javonte Williams is going off the board as running back 37. Ostensibly, that means you should probably have 3 running backs on your roster before you're taking Javonte Williams. When are you playing Javonte Williams over the first 4 weeks of the season when none of these guys are on bye? Sure, they could get hurt or what have you, but give me Tootin, give me the upside, give me the guy that could be a difference maker down the stretch. This is how you win $1 million playing in the FFPC. We'll move on to quarterbacks here. Another heavy hitter one. These guys are not going in the first round, but they are going fairly close to each other, and they're usually, not always, but usually the top 2 quarterbacks off the board. Would you rather draft Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson this year if you only had one league, Tyler?
I really don't think you could go wrong with either one, but I'm going to go with Josh Allen here. Last year's Bills, they were hyper efficient in the pass game. They were 8th in pass rate over expectation. They were number 2 in EPA per dropback, number 4 in pass success rate. Allen with the MVP. We saw the passing, rushing, touchdown combined productivity. But what I'm really looking at here is just consistency. Over the last 5 years, he's been the fantasy QB1, QB1, QB2, QB1, and QB4. So 3 out of the last 5, the number 1 asset. So I'm going after that. He remains a high price guy. I typically really just target these guys in super flex leagues when I've got the ability to grab one of them. But if you want to go this route, I would pick Allen over Lamar, who, again, I think Lamar is unfortunately set up for a little bit of regression in the passing touchdown department. And knowing Derrick Henry has 90% of the carries inside the 5-yard line for Baltimore, I just don't see Lamar making that ground up via rushing scores.
The quarterback I want to talk about next is Justin Fields, who is sort of like, now I live in Northeast Wisconsin, so I don't really take the subway at all. But Justin Fields is like the subway of quarterbacks. He is the fast food of quarterbacks. He's the type of player you never brag about taking, but you take him anyway as quarterback 10, quarterback 11, quarterback 12, because you understand that's the easiest way to fantasy points. Nobody likes taking the subway, but you take it because it's the quickest way to work. Nobody likes fast food. Well, maybe some people do, but you take it because it's quick and it's convenient and it gets you full. Justin Fields, you don't necessarily like taking him, but he gets the job done for fantasy. Or instead of taking Fields, you could take Drake May, who is the young, sexy upcomer that everybody is on this year. Everybody with their flag planting articles, there's a mention of Drake May. Everybody with their bold predictions, there's a mention of Drake May. A player who could really take a big leap forward with Josh McDaniels, now Stephon Diggs there, Kyle Williams as well, Travion Henderson we talked about. These guys are going fairly close to each other in drafts right now. Who would you rather draft, Tyler Buecher, Justin Fields, or Drake May?
It's a good question, honestly. I think it depends how bold you are, because I want to say Drake May. I feel like the safe answer is Justin Fields, like the safe answer, the safe fast food thing. But maybe I want to spend a little more for my dinner, and I'll go with Drake May.
You might get filet. You might get the filet price. You honestly could pay the same McDonald's price or whatever, but then they end up serving you filet and a baked potato, and it turns out pretty tasty.
That's absolutely true. We know two things about May entering the NFL. He was a willing deep ball thrower, and he had terrific athleticism. Unfortunately, last year's offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, called just about the worst offense he could for him. They rarely let him let it loose. They rarely called designed rushes for him. And despite the play calling, Drake May still averaged 36.3 rushing yards per game across his 10 healthy starts. That's basically a passing touchdown, just in rushing productivity. I don't want to go apples to apples with Fields, because Fields is going to take that in terms of rushing productivity. But then we can throw in the fact that May ranked number 2 among all FBS quarterbacks his final year at North Carolina in PFF's big time throw rate and an average depth of throw. So he's looking down the field for the big plays. He's waiting for it. He's now got an improved offensive line to give him that time. And should that big play develop, he'll rip it. If not, he'll take up that space that's been created because of those long developing plays. Last year, he scored 19 plus fantasy points per game in 7 of 11 games, despite Van Pelt's ineptitude. But yeah, now a much better offensive line, much better offensive weapons, and a far more fantasy friendly scheme. So I'm buying the 2025 breakout. My flag's next to the hundreds of others that are right there with him. I just really like everything we see here from May.
I want to shift to and by the way, I think you're spot on with your May analysis too. And maybe it's not talked about, and maybe it's not kosher of me to say this, but I think people forget, maybe because Drake May is white, that he actually consumes a good amount of rushing yards for fantasy as well. So it's not like oh, I got to take Fields because of the rushing. Drake May gets rushing yards too, significant rushing yards. Tight ends. Speaking of white guys, TJ Hawkinson or Travis Kelce. Hawkinson catching passes now from JJ McCarthy this year. He is going to be competing for targets not only with Justin Jefferson, but starting in week 4, Jordan Addison, now Adam Thielen, who's on the roster, as well as Aaron Jones, who's always been a prolific pass catcher out of the backfield. And then you have Travis Kelce. Kind of depends upon how you feel about him this year. I think I'm in for one more ride with him. I think this is probably it. I know he wants to go out on top. I think that there is, I could tell myself a world where he pays off this, tight end 6, tight end 7 ADP. But I'm going to put it to you, Tyler. Who would you rather draft between TJ Hawkinson or Travis Kelce this season?
I'm going to be honest. I'm going with TJ Hawkinson here, which might sound, I don't know if it's controversial because he's a little bit ahead of ADP than Kelce. But after starting last year on IR, Hawkinson over the back half of the year averaged 6.2 targets per game. That was right in line with what Addison posted. Mm-hmm. And Hawkinson just ran cold in the touchdown department. Goose egg there. But he gets a full off season to get that knee right. He's just been a perennial top 5 fantasy asset at the tight end position. And the number of suspensions and injuries to the Vikings pass catchers kind of sets up Hawkinson to be the guy where he gets off to a hot start in the opening schedule, even with the Thielen acquisition. Go ahead.
No, I think the Hawkinson thing is kind of like, we forget how successful this guy has been over the course of his career. And it's probably because his teammates are so awesome. Like Justin Jefferson might be the best wide receiver in pro football. And you have Jordan Addison, a guy who basically lives in the end zone. I mean, the end zone target, the amount of end zone targets that guy gets is insane. And sometimes I think we just kind of push Hockenson to the side because we know how good Jefferson and Addison are.
Yeah, Addison absolutely living in the end zone. I love that phrase. Flipping it to Kelce, though, I mean, when we look at the on-off splits of Rashee Rice basically last year, weeks 1 through 3, when Rice was healthy, Kelce was just not drawing target volume, 3.7 targets per game. And then when we look from weeks 4 through 18, 9.0 targets per game. So that all that volume just ballooned once Rice was off the field, which makes me feel Kelce will be a variable start where the first 6 weeks, yeah, it's going to be probably great for Kelce. But then afterward, we're probably going to see that baton passed over to Rice. Yeah. So there's maybe they're guys you start at various points of the year, and maybe you pick up a rookie or an upside play I don't really like recommending a second tight end in most redraft leagues, but in the FFPC format for sure, then yeah, this is kind of the ideal situation where you could do it.
Could be Mason Taylor late. You never know, pairing with Travis Kelce. You took Drake May over Justin Fields. Would you also draft Stephon Diggs, his teammate in New England, over Deebo Samuel?
I would, yeah. This is a tough one. I think Deebo has kind of been racking up all these soft tissue injuries where he's just kind of at the point where I feel like they've got to catch up to him at some point. And we saw it last year where he was like across the board, multiple advanced stats. Deebo was putting up his worst season. And some of that was due to injury for sure. But it just points toward maybe a player on the decline where we didn't exactly see it with Diggs. Diggs was just more of the offense was a new one for him in Houston where he was still productive, but I just think this is probably a better offense for him to become the number one focal point where there's a lack of tertiary targets for him in New England to face against. The Josh McDaniels offensive coordinator should help. If Diggs can return to 100% and by everything we've read and heard and seen this preseason and training camp, he looks to be 100%. I think he's got top 24, top 30 upside as May's number one target. Whereas Deebo, he's been kind of a fade for me where I'm afraid that San Francisco got out at the right time.
Do you have, because obviously it's Jayden Daniels, you want pieces of the Commanders offense. Do you have a favorite target for the Commanders this year, not named Jayden Daniels?
Sometimes I just like a guy like Daniels who will be able to spread it around where you don't need to pick the weapons. Like I kind of view this akin to like Jordan Love in Green Bay, where none of those guys have a greater than a 20% target share. You're just getting the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak. So I'd rather just get Daniels by himself. If I were to pick one, it would be McLaurin. But again, we talked about him rising ADP. It's kind of tough to click him now.
One more, Josh Downs, who I believe has come back to practice. Don't quote me on that. After he was dealing with a leg injury, or Khalil Shakir, who is dealing with a high ankle sprain, the same ankle that he had the high ankle sprain last season as well. Would you rather draft Downs or Shakir?
Yeah, the recurring ankle sprain and the offense being one where, again, it's under 20% across the board for Buffalo makes me want to lean away from Shakir and over towards Josh Downs, who, I mean, we saw some fantastic outings when he was playing with Joe Flacco last year. The Anthony Richardson-led ones, not so much. So there's some variability with Josh Downs, who I think he's another guy that a lot of people have their flags planted with. They've seen the target volume. They've seen the efficiency. The fantasy production has also followed to a limited degree. It's just Richardson's been a legitimate roadblock. Now throw in Daniel Jones under center, improve catchable targets. I think a year 3 breakout could be in line for Downs.
I think the other thing too is Daniel Jones, to me, much closer to the Joe Flacco type of quarterback play than Anthony Richardson. You can make the case he's going to be better than Flacco because he adds that rushing element and he can make plays with his legs. Maybe not to the degree that Richardson can, but certainly more mobile than Flacco where he can extend plays. We'll see what happens there in Indianapolis, and to learn more about the Colts and the other 31 teams in the NFL from a DFS standpoint, a betting standpoint, a dynasty standpoint, a high stakes standpoint, a fantasy football standpoint in general. Go to Fantasy Guru. Well, I'll let you do it, Tyler. What's the best way? I'm obviously at Tyler Buecher on X. What else are you doing for Fantasy Guru? Where's the best place for our viewers to keep tabs on you throughout the season and in the off season as well?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on tonight. You can catch all my content up for the upcoming year at fantasyguru.com. I run the gamut, like you just talked about. I do everything from start sits, waivers, weekly matchups, DFS, sports betting, podcasts, live streams, articles, Discord Q&A sessions. We've got all kinds of different content and tools over there to help fantasy footballers basically across the board and whatever you're looking at. So feel free to check out my stuff over at fantasyguru.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tyler Buecher. It's just my name, no underscores, no other things. But yeah, man, it's been a blast chatting with you.
It's a lot of fun. We're going to have you back at some point for sure, Tyler. You kicked off season 4 of FFPC Insider Access in style. I want to thank Tyler. I want to thank our producer, Matt Deutsch. Tonight. We'll be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be live at the FFPC live drafting events at Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. That's going to be a fun show as well, so don't miss that one. The last Insider Access before the NFL season starts. I want to remind everybody, too, the FFPC Big Gorilla and Main Event tournaments have open spots tonight. They're going to have open spots tomorrow and throughout the next 9 days of drafting. Get in while you can and take your shot at $1 million there. FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments, those are close to capacity. If you want to win $300,000 or $100,000, that is the way to do it. Dynasty Startups and Empire Dynasty Startups available at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com, myffpc.com. For Matt Deutsch, for Tyler Buecher, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Talk to you again next week.